Well, we get rolling on the Krueger Show on a Friday. Good to see everybody. Larry Krueger, Vish Kumaran joining us today as we get it rolling, talking a little 49ers, brought to you by Pig and a Pickle. Check them out, 2 locations, Emeryville and Corte Madera, the best barbecue in all of Northern California. Pig and a Pickle, proud sponsors of the Krueger Show. Vish, good to see you, man. How are you?
I'm good, Larry. How are you? What a smooth introduction with the pig and the pickle. That might be your best one yet.
Woo-wee. Thank you. Yeah, just a little mention. We'll have more from them in a bit.
Okay.
But yeah, man, we're off and running, and I am. We were gonna do this live stream at 3. But you had a little time conflict, and I switched it to 3:15. Then we got in a little late, so I just want to apologize to everybody who's waited for us. We are here, we're ready, and sorry for the delays, but we just probably should have moved it back a little further than I did. But luckily, what I was saying to you right before we went live is that your delay, normally I just wing it, I just straight on wing it.
Right.
But it's better when you can plan a little bit. And since I had 10 minutes, I actually have now a concrete plan for this entire live stream that is going to make it that much better. I mean, we've had good live streams in the past, but today, this live stream on the 31st of March here in 2023, this is when we're taking it to the next level.
This is going to be great, huh?
A lot of pressure, but yeah.
A lot of pressure?
A lot of pressure because we got to be good. You talk that big, you got to be good.
Right. This is the first plan you and I have ever had too, right? Usually it's just we come in here and we wing it.
I know. So it's also a risk because we've been doing pretty well. So now it's like, man, I'm changing it up. What if it bombs? It's like that kind of thing going. But here's what I got. I've got now the stream is entitled 49ers need to why the 49ers need to win now. And we're going to start with that. Then we're going to get into the 49er needs. I heard a whole breakdown. I heard a whole Brock Purdy interview that he did in Arizona with these guys. And it was really interesting what he had to say. So I'll give you the latest on what Brock has said about his rehab and everything. And I thought it was really interesting. And then we'll get into rookie quarterbacks because the Niners are on the rookie quarterback pursuit, it appears, and which ones we think might be best for them. Then our good friend Jordan Elliott on Niners Nation has an article up about a player that he says is the perfect fit for the 49ers. And so I think we'll go through their Niner needs and just go with who would be the perfect fit in the draft. And then my good buddy who unfortunately just got let go by 95-7 The Game. So he's out there and he's a free agent. The great Kyle Madsen. I don't know if you know Kyle, but Madsen is awesome as well. And he writes for Niners Wire. And he's got an article out right now, the 6 free agents who could help the 49ers. And I called up the article, but Vish, I intentionally did not look at who the players are because I want to organically kind of react to it with you as we go through who Kyle Madsen thinks are the 6 free agents that'd be a perfect fit. And then I tweeted, we're going to finish up on my Trey Lance tweet, which, I've got a real thought now, a well-developed opinion, if you will. Some people would call it a line of BS, but you know what? I'll call it a well-developed opinion on what I actually envision happening with Trey Lance and the 49ers this year. So that's what we got. So let's start
I'm looking forward to all of it.
Yeah. So let's fire away with the first topic, which is the 49ers need to win now. And I don't know if you agree with that, but I just think that this is so much in the Kyle Shanahan, John Lynch era. This is ultimately their moment right here, right now. And I know we're talking a lot about quarterbacks getting healthy and, the roster turnover and Javon Hargrave and what's yet to be done. But I just think, Vish, when you look at where they're at, they've tasted a Super Bowl. They've been to the last 2 NFC championship games. Their core is right on this is going to be the prime year of the core. After this year, I don't know that Trent Williams and Debo and Kittle and Warner are actually ascending football players. I think they're right at their peak right now. I think next year, for several key 49er players, this is their, I don't want to say their final go round, but I think this is their best shot at being great. And I'm looking at the NFC, Vish, and the Eagles just lost both coordinators, Javon Hargrave, Miles Sanders, and a number of players. They've been dealt a heavy hit in free agency. I like Detroit, but outside of Detroit, maybe Seattle if they had a great draft. I think the rest of the NFC still seems like 2 years, 3 years away. But I mean, things happen fast in football.
Yeah.
But I think the 49ers right now have a window where if they can really fire, they could wind up in 2 of the next 3 Super Bowls, 3 of the next 5 Super Bowls. I think this is their go time to really establish a dominant, if Shanahan and Lynch are ever going to have any dominance here, I think it's going to be right now in the NFC. All right, give me your thought.
I don't know about 3 of 5 or something like that. I think
who do you like? Who do you like in the conference?
Again, it's hard to comment on the state of the conference right now, right? The 3 teams you mentioned, Philadelphia has 2 first-round picks, including a top 10 pick. It's not necessarily something you would expect from a team that just represented the NFC in the Super Bowl. Detroit has 2 first-round picks and I think 2 second-round picks as well. Seattle has 2 first-round picks and 2 second-round picks as well. So there's still a lot that needs to happen, right? If any of those teams just come in and kill the draft, right? They get 2 premium players with their 2 first-round picks. You never know how the outlook of the NFC is going to change. I find it difficult to project the long-term outlook of the 49ers beyond this year just because they continue to not have the long-term answer at quarterback, set in stone. We think they might have it, but again, Brock Purdy is coming off of a very serious injury. Trey Lance is also coming off of a serious injury and is about to enter a quarterback competition. So it's possible that one of him, even Sam Darnold, you could throw in there. It's possible as one of those guys being a long-term possibility, but none of them have established that yet. And so it's very hard to have long-term success in the NFL. Crew, what's the last team you can imagine that's gone to 3 of 5 Super Bowls without having their quarterback being one guy, right? Like the Buffalo Bills in the 90s went to 4 Super Bowls with Jim Kelly. The Cowboys in the 90s went to 3 Super Bowls with Aikman. Niners in the 90s went to 3 NFC
the only
championship
one
games
I
with
think
Steve
of
Young.
is Washington. Washington
right,
one
in
year
the
had
80s.
Doug Williams, one year they had Rippon. They had some good years. Yeah, Theismann, Jay Schrader. They seemed like they moved their quarterback around. But yeah, for the most part, you have to have continuity at quarterback. But you don't think the 49ers feel like they have a good young quarterback in Brock Purdy? Because
I think they do. I think they do feel like that, Krug. I just find it. I'm not ready to say Brock Purdy is the long-term answer at quarterback based on those 8 games until he comes back from the injury and shows that he was the same player that he was for those 8 games. Until that happens, Krug, he remains an unknown to me. He's injured, and it's a very serious injury. And Krug, I think we're diminishing in all of this a guy. How many second-year quarterbacks have you ever seen have to go through their entire second year without going through the entire offseason, rehabbing a serious injury, and then having to re-enter the fray mid-season? It's not exactly an easy thing here for him to not go through the offseason. I think there's a lot more variables to the Brock Purdy case too. So in terms of 3 to 5 years projection, I'm having difficulty there. In terms of this year, Krug, I agree with your outlook. Like, I think for Eric Armstead, for Trent Williams, for George Kittle, we're nearing a time where we don't know how much longer they're going to continue to be the best players amongst the best players at their position, right? Trent Williams
was already
cresting
the hill. They're cresting the hill.
And Trent Williams was already contemplating retirement, right? And we're talking about a guy who the only real achievement he needs on his resume is team achievements, Super Bowl. That's it. The guy has achieved everything you can achieve individually at his position. In fact, in some ways, I don't think he's gotten enough credit because he's revolutionized this position a little bit over the last couple of years. He's done things in the run game over the last 2-3 years that have not been done in the history of football. Like, we're talking about a guy that, when it's all said and done, when we say the greatest left tackle or the best left tackle to ever play the sport, might be him. It might be him, and we're seeing that prime right now, but we don't know how long that's going to be. And because of that, Krug, I feel like the Niners are really on a year-to-year kind of thing. They have, and I feel like a lot of their contracts for these players, right? They have an out on Debo in 2025. They have an out on Kittle in 2024. They have an out on Armstead's contract in 2024. So they're going to be making a lot of decisions on these veteran players who have been part of the core that's, maintain this 3 out of 4 NFC championship game success, right? They've already had a mini run with this core of players. And so for me, I think Classard 49 says it best. They've been in their win now window since 2019. Like, to me, this is kind of the end of the window for this entire core of players. This core of players that we've seen had so much success, like Debo, Kittle, Trent Williams, Bosa, Fred Warner. Like, that core that has taken them to so much success over the last 3-4 years. I think we're closer to the end of that rather than to reemerging another 3 to 5 year run. To me, the only way that happens, like, look at Seattle, right? Krug, they had 5 straight years where they had the top, top 5 defense in the sport, 3 years where it was number 1. And they were still able to maintain success after those 5 years when their defense regressed and Earl Thomas left and Richard Sherman left and Cam Chancellor retired and Bruce Irvin, was still there, but they lost Cliff Averill. They lost Michael Bennett. All these different guys that were part of, one of the greatest defenses ever. They were able to maintain that. Why? Because they shifted their team towards a more offensive identity because they became a more quarterback-driven team. And right. The 49ers, we would hope, had made that transition when they were this talent and defense-heavy team, but they never necessarily found the long-term answer at quarterback. Now, it could be Purdy, Krug, but I got to see him come back from injury without the entire offseason this year and see I don't even need to see the same player on the field, Krug. I just need to see the same player physically. I think he could struggle next year and still be their long-term answer as long as you just make sure he gets a full offseason of reps and all of that the subsequent season going into 2024.
Everything has to be predicated on how does Brock come back, because you're right. I mean, it's like if he's totally diminished and not an NFL quarterback anymore, then obviously that changes things. But just assuming that he can return to the player that he was, man, I think the 49ers, let's just go right down the list. Seattle, can they win the Super Bowl? They've got Geno Smith at quarterback, and they've got holes everywhere. I don't think so. The Rams look like they're going the other way with Stafford. I think they're going to start tearing that thing down. I don't think the Rams are a big contender. Arizona is not going to have Kyler this year for a good portion of the year. They're not a Super Bowl team. Tampa just lost Tom Brady. They don't have. They're
in cap hell too. They're in cap hell.
New Orleans has Derek Carr. I don't believe in Derek Carr at all. Carolina, maybe Atlanta, I guess. I have a little bit more respect for Atlanta, but Desmond Ridder is their quarterback. Minnesota. Minnesota's got great offensive weapons, and I think Cousins is underrated. But their defense was like 31st in the NFL. They're like the worst defense in pro football. Rodgers could be leaving Green Bay. Detroit's starting to grow up, but they still have Jared Goff. To me, it depends how you feel about Jared Goff. I think the Bears are probably the scariest team because of Fields, and Poles, I think, is a really good young GM. And I think Poles is going to get that going there. I expect the Bears to kind of be a team. To me, it's like Atlanta, maybe, Detroit, maybe, Chicago, maybe. Washington has no quarterback. Philly's obviously good. And then Dallas and New York, I think, are going to be, right there. They'll be in the mix too. So, it's not the Niners, if Purdy is right and returns to what he was last year, and they have as good a draft as I think they potentially can have, the 49ers are on the verge of total domination in this conference.
But that's because you put those two ifs on the 49ers, right? If they have as good a draft as you think they can have, and if Purdy comes back to full health, well, what if the Lions have an outstanding draft? They have more picks in the top 50 than the 49ers. What if Seattle has an outstanding draft? They have 2 first-round picks. What if Philadelphia has an outstanding draft? They have 2 first-round picks. I don't think we're at a position right now to be able to make a projection that way, because there are ifs surrounding every single team in the NFC. I'm with you. If we're looking at talent top to bottom, it's the 49ers, and then maybe Philadelphia second. But to me, they're not the same team in terms of talent as the 49ers when you lose Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. Even though I really like the signing of Terrell Edmonds, when you lose Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, when you lose Javon Hargrave, when you lose players of that caliber, you're not the same team. So, like, to me, in terms of talent, I agree with you, Krug. There's nobody really in the same tier as the 49ers right now. But the 49ers also have their fair share of questions. And yes, they can possibly win the NFC too, but like that one team in the AFC that has that one quarterback that just won the Super Bowl with 6 rookies starting, and they have 2 first-round picks too, is looking so scary right now that, yeah.
Who are you referring to? You talking about Philly?
No, Kansas City.
Oh, Kansas City. They have 2 firsts?
Yeah.
Do they really? Well, yeah, I mean, Kansas City, I mean, all those teams in the AFC have those big-time quarterbacks. We'll get to that in a bit, but I just think the NFC is like, I mean, if we're shaking in our boots over Detroit, I mean, if we're talking about, I mean, Dallas, New York, I think are a couple of years away. Chicago, I think, is a couple of years away. Detroit, I still think, is a couple of years away. I really look at the NFC and say it's Niners, it's Eagles, maybe Seahawks if Seahawks have a big run. But I mean, the Niners beat the Seahawks 3 times last year, so I'm having a hard time shaking in my boots about Seattle. I just think the 49ers are in a position right now where they've tasted the Super Bowl. They've tasted going to the NFC Championship game. They've got a very motivated roster. They've got unfinished business. Everybody from Jed to John to Kyle to almost every single player in that room, they're going to show up in camp with one thing on their mind, and that's the Super Bowl. And very few teams, believe it or not, set that kind of a standard. I think the 49ers, even just to forget, everything doesn't have to go right. And even if these teams all do have good off seasons, I still think the Niners are stacked compared to almost everybody in the conference. And I think if they can have a good off season, man, they could propel themselves into a dynasty type mode, because they're coming off a year where they added a lot of good young players, guys that I think are going to get better in year 2. I told you, I think the arrow's pointing up on 16 different 49er players. That's a huge number of players. The arrow's pointing straight up. So that's a lot of basic improvement. They just get some basic year 1 to year 2 improvement incrementally from all these players. They're going right on by these other teams. And that's if they don't get a huge haul. If they get a huge haul in this draft or add any significant free agents in the spring post-draft, I think they're on a totally different plane than the other teams in the NFC. Let's jump to the next topic.
I agree with you there. Go ahead. I do want to mention one thing, Krug. I just looked it up. Kansas City does not have 2 first-round picks. I was wrong about that. I thought they acquired a second one when they traded Tyreek Hill for whatever reason. That
they might have 2 next year, because they some of those picks were pushed back a few years, weren't they?
Perhaps. I don't know. I don't know why I thought that, but yeah.
Super chat from Rob Schneider, by the way, says, just watch Ritual Killer, a thriller mystery with Morgan Freeman, and guess who's the bad guy? Vernon Davis. Shout out the Niners for producing movie stars. Yeah, I was just talking to somebody yesterday who was like, yeah, Vernon Davis is...
Is he good in the movie?
I don't know, but I mean, heck, he's Vernon Davis, and he's multi-talented. Good for Vernon. I know, the guy had a good NFL career. Now,
really good.
I think he was, people say, oh, he's the greatest tight end in Niner history. I don't know about that. I'm not sure.
He did tie Antonio Gates' record for touchdowns in a season receiving by a tight end in 2009 before Rob Gronkowski broke that.
He did. Was it 13 touchdowns or something?
13. Yeah, 13.
And he was very strong, very fast. He's interesting, though. It's like he ran 4.37 coming out of Maryland, and so he went in like the top 10. But he didn't really ever play to that speed very much. You know what I mean? Like I don't remember him running away and hiding more than a few times. And his ball skills for a tight end were just okay.
Always jumped to catch the ball, right? And was kind of a body catcher too.
Kind of a body catcher, inconsistent hands, multiple balls hit him in the face mask. But he also, the interesting thing about him, he was billed as this awesome, speedy, down the seam tight end. He did make some big pass receptions with Alex Smith, and he had that one big year. But where it's funny, he was billed as that, but what he really was a dominant inline blocker.
Yeah.
Because he was so strong and
he was
physical.
Freak.
Yeah.
He was a freak. Yeah. He's
a great blocker.
He wasn't, and it fit their scheme, right? Because with Greg Roman, it was a lot more power, right? So he was just in line, just mauling people. Yeah, he was a physical freak. I disagree with you though. I have enough examples in my head of him running away from people. I mean, even the Giants NFC Championship game, right? Like that game was an awful game on offense for both teams. And I think they had two big plays in that game, and both big plays were from Vernon Davis. One, I think he ran by everybody, and I think Alex Smith threw it up to him, and he went down the sideline, maybe like a 60, 70-yard touchdown. I've never rewatched that game in my life just because of how much it hurt me to watch them lose.
I was expecting a guy to make big plays down the seam a lot, and the best play for him was the one where the tight end sneaks out and then you throw it way up in the air, like kind of lofted for him. He didn't have awesome ball skills, but he was dangerous. He was dangerous with the ball in his hands. Scotch says, Larry, you can't say all the arrows are up on us and completely discount Seattle. All their players' arrows are up. Yeah, it's not that, but the Niners are just far deeper than Seattle. I mean, Seattle's still. You can go look at their numbers on both sides of the line of scrimmage. But you're right. Abraham Lucas, Charles Cross, Kobe Bryant, Tariq Woolen, Kenneth Walker, Boye Mafe. I mean, they had a tremendous draft, and there's several play. That's why it did include them in the whole Super Bowl discussion, because if I'm a huge John Schneider fan, if John Schneider has another big draft, Seattle is going to be, as you say, Scotch, a contender. But I guess I'm not really sure. Do I believe in Geno or not? And then the Niners have seemingly had their number the last three times, and they've kind of been better and kind of pushed Seattle around a little bit on both sides of the ball at the line of scrimmage. So I kind of see them as kind of a solid step behind the 49ers. But, if they have another big offseason and Schneider's capable, and they do have a top 10 pick. And there is, you know what the talk is? This is actually the hot rumor that I read this morning. They're saying, Vish, that I think Seahawks pick 5. Is that where they're at? 5?
Mm-hmm.
That is the floor for Anthony Richardson.
Oh.
No, Anthony Richardson. What would you think of the Niner defense having to defend Anthony Richardson with Kenneth Walker?
I think they would eat him up year one. Year one, they would eat him up.
The Niners
won't play man. Yeah, they won't play man. They'll play zone, and they'll force him to sit in the pocket and play a game that he can play. He has the potential to play. That's why he's going to be a top 5 pick in the draft. But he probably needs a year or two of development before he's doing that. And so, I think they would eat up Anthony Richardson year one. Now, I think if the Seattle Seahawks draft Anthony Richardson, it would be interesting, because then you know what that would indicate to me, Larry?
What's that?
They're trying to wait out the 49ers window. They know it's the 49ers time, so they're trying to wait it out and develop Anthony Richardson. And the moment the 49ers start to slip and all these great players they have start to get old, they explode, because they had 2 great drafts and they're developing this young stud with insane amount of talent in Anthony Richardson. Now, there's a lot of development that would need to happen for that plan to come to fruition. It's not automatic, but he's obviously got a very, very special skill set in terms of his tangible physical ability. But Larry, I think to answer Scotch's question, though, the reason you're more, inclined to say arrows up on the 49ers is because, this team has pedigree too, right? They've been to 3 out of 4 NFC championship games, right? That's why even though I bring up the quarterback question, it's hard not to brush it off, right? This team has had quarterback questions basically each of the last 4 years, and they've still made 3 NFC championship games. So it's hard not to brush that off. Whereas Seattle, while they were quite good this year, we haven't had the sustenance to be able to just pick them as a team that's going to be at the top of the NFC yet. Maybe if they have a great season this year, but the NFC is wide freaking open. Every team has questions. It's crazy.
Yeah. Bruce R says big name DNs available. Any chance the Niners sign one after the draft for cheap. Niners number one need is start the season fast. Yeah, Bruce. This isn't Bruce's first rodeo. He's seen some Niner football, because there's no question. Sometimes they'll start the season a little slow. You can argue maybe that's the way Shanahan kind of runs his camp. You could also argue that, once you play, it's kind of like what the Warriors are doing. Once you play into June in the NBA, it's hard to get up for games in March. That's what Draymond Green kind of suggested. Maybe that's the deal with the Niners. Once you play in the NFC Championship game, and that becomes your standard of the Super Bowl, maybe it's difficult to really get it revved up.
I have a different
in September.
Theory. I have a different theory. I think it's the attrition of the long season. They always come into the season banged up. They always come into the season.
That's a good call too. That's a great call. Yeah. So they're not what Vish is basically saying is they're not full strength. They're coming into the year and they're sometimes still got guys rehabbing injuries from the year prior. Yeah, that's a hell of a point. Okay. Topic 2 I wanted to get to. The actual needs of the 49ers in detail. This is what I have as the actual needs. On offense, they need a starting caliber right tackle or somebody who could compete down the road to be a starting caliber right tackle. So it doesn't have to be somebody who's, can plug and play. It could be somebody that you just like as a starter, but a starting caliber right tackle. And this is in no order. Maybe another wide receiver if you see a dynamic player that that you think you can get a good deal on. I kind of like Jonathan Mingo. I've seen him in the 5th round. To me, that's a steal of a 5th round pick. That guy could be a stud. He could be a Pro Bowl caliber receiver. So if you got like some awesome value on a receiver, I could see that. Otherwise, I don't think receiver's a big need. A future number 1 tight end or a solid number 2 tight end. I think Kittle's a 1. I think the rest of the guys are 3s and 4s. I think tight end, another primary tight end is a need. And then I think a need that is an underrated need, and I didn't really think of it as a need until I saw that they worked out this Izzy Anabaconda from Pitt. But I think Shanahan would like that back that has the big time speed that at will can get to the edge, like he had in Mostert. Even if he ran him in a committee type situation, right. He wasn't an every down back. I think that, the same way they needed Danny Gray to take the top off the defense vertically in the receiving core. Now they have that weapon. They're more balanced there. They need a dynamic speed back who can get to the edge and give them that outside zone, one cut and go, home run hitter kind of capability in the run game. Because one thing that it was pretty clear when they had Mostert, they were dynamic throwing it and running it.
Yeah.
Now with McCaffrey, they're dynamic throwing it, but they're really more plodding as far as running it. And if they had, they got a big play out of the run game from Ray McLeod. And to me, if they had that one dynamic running back that could take it to the house on any particular snap, it would give them a dynamic on offense they don't have.
So I agree with you probably on every single need that you just mentioned, right? Right tackle, obvious. I don't think right tackle is necessarily, like you said, a solution for this year, but draft your next guy to be your next right tackle, right? Have him sit a year and develop him. They seem to like that plan. They did it for Talanoa Hufanga. They did it for Aaron Banks. They've done it for a few different guys here. They're about to do it with Drake Jackson. He essentially, he played, right, but it was always minimal snaps, and then he ended up sitting basically the entire last 4 or 5 games of the playoffs, or the 4 or 5 games of the season, including the playoffs. So I'm with you across the board there, Krug. The one thing I would say with running back is I think it is a need. I do think they need a home run hitter speed guy. Though I do think Mitchell, when he's healthy, which is, once in a while, he does show a little bit more juice, but then that knee seems to always be banged up, right? The multiple MCL sprains last year, the knee injury before that, it is a little bit of a question mark. The thing with the running back, though, is Krug, Shanahan doesn't seem inclined to be rotating these running backs a lot. How many snaps was McCaffrey playing down the stretch of the season? Mitchell
80,
the year before
I seem like
was
80%.
Yeah. We remember you and I were talking about the McCaffrey-Mitchell split going into the playoffs. You were saying it was going to be 60-40 McCaffrey-Mitchell, and I said it was going to be 80-20. Well, it turned out to be like 90-10 McCaffrey and Mitchell. Like Mitchell had
But
to have like 3 good runs in a row.
Mitchell never physically got right.
That's true.
I think.
That's true. But even the year before, right, they never split Mitchell with anybody.
No.
Mitchell basically, and they had to go to Debo. And Debo logged how many snaps at running back? So there doesn't, even Mostert, other than, the time Tevin Coleman would come in to start the game. And the real issue was that, Mostert wasn't very good at pass blocking and Coleman was excellent at it. That's why there was a little bit more of a rotation there. But overall, it was not, like Larry, they just don't seem inclined to rotate their running backs as much as maybe we think. And so that's where I do think, Larry, like I agree with you, because I think that's a player that would actually make a massive difference, right? A guy that can hit the hole and score from anywhere, especially with the way they block up certain runs, how advantageous it. That's why Mostert was pretty special there, because like you could block up a run and say like, okay, it's blocked up. And if you block it up right, Mostert's scoring. Like that's a big difference from getting a chunk play in the run game to scoring. Like it's a big difference. And so I agree with you. It's a need. It just doesn't feel like something they're inclined to use as much, given, what we've seen from them the last couple of years.
Well, and then on defense, I think I've got it down to they need 2 defensive ends. They need 1 safety that can really cover.
Agreed.
And I think they need 1 or 2 corners. They're pretty good at defensive tackle. They're pretty good at linebacker, but 1 or 2 corners, definitely at least 2 defensive ends, and 1 really good coverage safety that can be a dominant player. And maybe not play right away because you got Tayshaun Gibson and Hufanga, but maybe down the road. So, I mean, to me, those are the needs that they have. What do you think of their needs on defense?
Yeah, I agree with all of those. I don't know about the 2 defensive ends as much.
I'm not a big fan of Cleveland Farrell or Austin Bryant. I just think.
What about Drake Jackson?
I like Drake Jackson, but I mean, to me, it would be nice if they had at least 2 more guys there.
I agree. I agree with you. I agree with you just because of how deep the defensive line draft is, and it would be nice to have their depth guys just be young, talented players over these older players who we know have a very defined skill set, but they are confident will do a job, the Kerry Hyder types. And Austin Bryant, I don't know if he necessarily fits that mold. He's definitely way more gifted in terms of physical pass rushing ability than a Kerry Hyder, but he's not, the most gifted guy in the world. And Cleveland Farrell, I mean, we've talked about this, right? What kind of top 5 gifts does he have? None. He's not explosive like a top 5 pick edge rusher would look like. He doesn't bend how a top 5 pick edge rusher would look like. He's not powerful and just physically imposing like how you would think a top 5 pick pass rusher that's that stiff and not that explosive would look like. But he's a high effort. He's a decent player. He just doesn't have any elite traits about him, which is what we usually think about when we're talking about top 5 pass rushers. I agree with you probably on all those needs though across the board. I do like their corner depth though. I do. I like the signing of Isaiah Oliver. I like Demore Lenore. Yeah, I like Miles Hartsfield. Charvarius Ward is obviously a terrific player. I think the big wild card there is Ambry Thomas, but it seems like he might make the roster again. But, when Drake Kirkpatrick, who's signed, 10 weeks into the season, is getting snaps over you, it doesn't really scream that they think highly of his future.
The one guy that I'm eager to see what role he's in this summer is Quantrez Knight, because Quantrez Knight's played some corner. He's played some free safety. He's played some nickel. He's a good special teamer. I think he's a guy that's going to, after a year in an NFL on an NFL team, NFL, nutrition, conditioning, lifting. I think he could get a little bit more sudden, a little bit better shape. I expect him to, have a spot maybe on special teams, but definitely he's a defensive back that can help you in a couple areas. But yeah, Ambry Thomas is kind of the question mark. But to me, I'd love to go to camp with like 7 or 8 really dependable corners. And right now you got Lenore's 1, Charvarius would be 2, Womack would be 3, Hartsfield would be 4, and Oliver would be 5.
Right.
And then after that, I don't know about everybody else. So it's like I'd love to see them get 1, maybe 2 corners, especially because once you lose a guy, like if you lose a corner, man, they're impossible to go find off the street in the middle of the year. So I'm
Let
hoping
me
that
ask you a
a couple
question,
of those
Larry.
day 3 picks are corners.
I think it's kind of interesting that both the corners they signed this offseason, I mean, Isaiah Oliver, right? He struggled playing outside. Even though physically he's more of an outside corner than a nickel corner, right? He's big, he can run. I mean, he's not the fastest guy, but he can run. But he's a nickel player, and Miles Hartsfield is a nickel player as well. Do you think that means that Diamador Lenore and Sam Womack are looked at as outside corners? I know Womack was drafted to be a nickel, but they ended up having him play outside whenever they played him last year, outside of when he started week 1. And Diamador Lenore was the starter. He took the job from Womack at nickel, and then he ended up moving outside. And I thought he played well overall. If you look at his season, for a guy that, was a 5th-round pick in his second year playing on the other side of Mooney Ward, I thought he had a strong season. Yeah, for sure. And so do you think that perhaps they look at those two guys as outside corners, and that's why they signed 2 nickels for depth now that Jimmy Ward walked?
Well, I just think that the nickel spot is a really difficult spot. You got to deal with the two-way break. Usually you got to be physical. You also have to be smart. I'd much rather have an experienced guy who's been through the NFL battles. Inside you can get picked off. There's all kinds of pick plays and pseudo pick plays, and it's like
Right.
it's just a different deal inside. And I think it's so your technique and your experience means so much. I just think in Oliver, they found a player who, you're right. I mean, at Colorado, he played outside, and then in the league when he started, he played outside, but he's coming off a really good year where he got healthy and he played really efficiently inside. So I think they're just trying to capitalize on that momentum. I don't even know that they would have liked Oliver outside because he was kind of inconsistent, but this year he kind of got to a different level of consistency, and he's still relatively young. So and then losing Ward was so dependable, and he could play in any spot.
Right.
I just think they really want to be covered. Hartsfield was probably just a personal favorite of Wilkes, right? I'm sure Wilkes just said, "Hey, look, give me a guy that I can count on." But Hartsfield may do a lot of work on special teams,
Right, and that's where I think it's hard for me to think because Ambry Thomas is a so-so special teams player too. It's hard for me to think that Hartsfield wouldn't make this team if we're talking about a 4th or 5th corner, Larry. His special teams has to give him a really, really big advantage, regardless of that being a league minimum contract that he signed.
Yeah, I think he's probably got pretty good expectation that he's going to be on the team this year. Just knowing that, that Wilkes knows him from Carolina. All right, next topic I want to get to. The latest on Brock Purdy. I heard an interview that Brock Purdy did, and it was on YouTube. I heard it. It was basically a radio show from Arizona, the something and something show. I forget. I was listening to it last night. But it's really interesting listening to Brock talk about it. He said, he had the surgery, and that, right now he's just working on range of motion, and that he'll spend the next few weeks working on just range of motion until he's ready to start throwing. He didn't talk about any trepidation. He said that the doctor that has worked with him has worked with a lot of baseball players, and they have a real solid plan, that they really bought into the plan, and that he didn't put a timetable on it, but he did say that he's right now he's working on his range of motion. He said the Niner doctors have been out there to visit him in Arizona, and they're keeping a regular account of what he's doing in his rehab and how it's progressing and different benchmarks. But he said it sounded all positive. It didn't sound like in any way, he felt like he was concerned. He talked, obviously very respectfully about the players on the team and right. How, the one thing about Purdy that's really interesting is he's just such a focused young guy. I mean, not all young people are focused like this, and he is focused. And it's just, a lot about how he talked about how he had a chance to talk to Joe Montana, and how, Montana, it was really cool to get a chance to talk to Joe, and how important he views his position as the 49er quarterback, and just said how eager he is to get out on the field and start doing work with his guys and start and making a return trip to the Super Bowl. And It was interesting. He said that he spent a lot of time right before the surgery, just really doing an evaluation on himself, the season, and what he needs to get better. And it's like when you hear that, it's like you can't help but think this is a guy who, had a lot of success, and yet he's being very self-critical, trying to evaluate himself so he can perfect his craft so that he can get better coming off this surgery. So obviously he doesn't know how he's going to heal, and that's all unknown, but there was no concern. No, I'm questioning myself. I'm not really sure. There was every time they asked him a question about the particulars of the rehab, he had a particular answer, timeline, explanation. So he just seems to be in a good place mentally right now.
Yeah, and I can add, I guess, a little bit of insight to what you said about how, he's so focused. I remember reading an article, I think Matt Barrows wrote it during the season, and it was about Purdy in college and how apparently his father's like business, like they lost a lot of money, like it stopped doing well while he was in college. And that kind of forced him to reassess his life, and he had to understand what football meant to him at that point, what his family meant to him. Like it focused him on what's important to him and what he needs to do to be successful and what's important to him. And that's not necessarily a realization. Given that we're similar in age, I feel like I'm able to say that it's not necessarily a realization that everybody goes through at that age, to be that focused at that, the start of their career. Again, I went through a similar transition. It's not the NFL, it's not doing that, but the transition of, going from college to starting your career. And I would certainly say that I'm nowhere near as focused as Brock Purdy sounds. So has a lot to do with why he's so focused, because he knows what football means to him, and it means everything to him. And that's what's really, really cool. And I would say, Krug, if there's my number one guess as to why John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan seem so convinced on him after those 8 games, and despite the severity and the seriousness of this injury, I think it's that. I think they believe in the person. I think they believe in the integrity of the person. I think they believe so much in the person and who he is and how he is, that I think that's what gives them confidence that he's going to be able to come back from an injury that, Mike Silver called severe a couple weeks ago. Cam Inman called the surgery a career-saving surgery. Like, those are some big words used on surgery to the throwing elbow of, such an young player. And even with that, the 49ers seem to be so confident about him when they talked about him during the owners meeting. And I think it's because of exactly what you just described. It's how focused he is and how much football seems to mean to him. That would have to be my guess, would it not? That's why they are. Yeah.
I think it's 2 things. I think it's the way he played, right? He played really well.
Right.
But I think the other thing, Vish, and it's kind of the ugly side of the business, but I think they need to win now. Like what I said off the start of this live stream was that it's go time for the Niners. It's go time for Shanahan. It's go time for Lynch. They've flirted with this thing. They've got a window right here, but their window is, we don't know if it's 2 more years for some of their top guys. This next year is kind of it. This is a huge window for them. They won't be able to keep it together forever. And the lifespan of these football players is so much shorter than we really anticipate. Right. It goes by in the blink of an eye. So I just really think that part of the reason they're so wed to Brock Purdy, Vish, is because he is the quarterback that they think has a chance to help them win now. And they need to win now. And they're focused on winning now. So I think it's partly because they respect Brock and the way he played, but I think it's also just out of necessity. They need to win now, and they feel like he's the quarterback that also is ready to win now. And obviously it's all going to come down to how he rehabs from this injury. We've got this one from How About Them Niners. He says, have you seen running back Chase Young yet? 4.43 40 looks good. I haven't seen him. Have you?
I haven't done running backs yet. I've done quarterbacks.
I think might be Chase Brown. Are you talking about Chase Brown from Illinois?
Chase Young is.
Chase Young's the Washington Commander
pass rusher.
Yeah, I think you're talking about Chase, and I do have my trusty little draft guide now.
Which one did you get?
This is the Lindy's. The Lindy's.
Okay. My dad used to buy the Pro Football Weekly draft guide. So he had everyone.
Oh my God, that was the best one ever. It was made by Joel Bushbaum. Yeah.
And then Nolan Naraki started doing it, and he used to buy them from 93 to 2000. I think the last one that was made was 18.
Right. I've got them all. Joshua. They're all sitting right in this bookcase behind me.
Yeah, we have.
Hold on 1 second. Hold on.
So I've read all of those. 95 with Keyshawn Johnson on the cover.
I just pulled
96 with
pulled
Keyshawn
one
Carter.
out, and this one goes way back.
Which one is this?
1995.
Oh, our cover's a little bit different for 95.
95. It has Ogden, Gardner, Roman Oben, Lance Johnstone, Randall Godfrey, Hardy, Edwards, Eric Molds.
Yeah.
So I used Joel Bushbaum was the best. And then
I used to read those like all the time. Like when I was a kid, I used to read like all of those. And I remember I used to be like obsessed with knowing everybody's 40 time, everybody's height, everybody's weight. And when I was like 7, I think, I thought 40 time like meant everything. So I was so happy when the 49ers drafted Jason Hill, because Jason Hill ran 4.36 at the combine.
From Sacred Heart High School.
Right. Calvin Johnson ran 4.37, I think. And so I was like, oh my God, this guy ran faster than Calvin Johnson, who was the second pick in the draft. But no, I'm half joking about that. But I'm actually not joking about that. I truly did believe that. But I really enjoyed reading those books. Like I used to go back and read like draft evaluations of players that, came out and washed out of the league before I even started watching football, like Peter Warwick and stuff like that. So
it's amazing how often they get it right. It's amazing how often Bushbaum and then Naraki got it right. It's funny, Kuiper is the guy that everybody kind of knows as Mr. Draft, but Joel Bushbaum was a guy that like Bill Belichick would call and talk to.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I mean, I think he did it. He made these draft guides in his like Manhattan apartment, and he died a number of years ago, and then Naraki took it over for Pro Football Weekly. But it was an incredible draft guide. It absolutely was. The detail was just ridiculous.
Each player had like 3 paragraphs written on them.
Oh, no matter who
they were. It was incredible. Yeah,
you could go through this thing, and this one, actually, it's funny. This one that I grabbed. This was what they did before. This wasn't the draft. This was the Pro Prospects preview.
Yeah, I was going to say it looks different from the draft guide.
It's a little different. It's a little different in that they produced a draft guide, and then they produced this like before the season.
Okay, so we only had the draft guides. I was going to say the cover looks different.
Yeah,
I remember 90. I think 95, 96 on the draft guide. I forgot who's on the cover. I want to say it was Keyshawn Carter.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I'm sure I got it.
And then I think 96, Keyshawn Johnson's on the cover. 97, Orlando Pace is on the cover. 98 is Manning, obviously. Manning Woodson.
Oh, it was an incredible book. It was absolutely an incredible book. But that's, nothing earth shattering there on Purdy. There's nothing really to report, but it was good to hear, that he's progressing, that he hasn't had anything flare up. That he's confident in his rehab and their plan, and that he feels like he'll be ready to hit the field and start throwing again, and we'll see from there where it goes. But it was interesting to hear him kind of break it all down. All right, topic 3. The Niners have been sniffing around rookie quarterbacks. What do you think? Is there a rookie quarterback? To me, if you said, well, if they use the the same kind of approach that they did with Brock Purdy, then who would they like? They probably would like Stetson Bennett, right? Because what was Brock Purdy? He was undersized, but he was a 4-year starter. He had total command. No moment was too big for him. If you're looking for, hey, let's replicate that, maybe you like a Stetson Bennett.
What about a DTR?
I was going to say DTR played 6 years at UCLA. So he has another guy with great experience, huge, long college resume to make mistakes and develop. DTR is a far better player today than he was 3 years ago. So he played extensively in college. Then we saw Lynch on the sideline at the Stanford Pro Day watching Tanner McKee.
Right.
Then there's, Jake Hayner, whose, mom is Julie Hayner from Channel 2. Jake Hayner played incredible football for Fresno State, had a long, illustrious career in the Valley, and then was the MVP of the Senior Bowl. So, and Hayner's kind of like Purdy, smaller guy, but a pretty good arm. So I don't know. What would you say if you were saying which rookie, then there's talk that they, Logan Bonner from Utah State, they went out and met with Logan Bonner, who didn't, had some injuries, but he's like 6'1", 220. Another guy, a little bit shorter, but he's got a pretty good arm. What do you think? Is there a rookie quarterback? One, do you envision them drafting a rookie quarterback, signing a rookie quarterback? And which one do you think is the perfect fit for their third job?
Yeah, it's funny you bring
or
up
maybe fourth job.
It's funny because the last name you brought up, right? I watched, I think, 8 or 9 quarterbacks this draft, which is like the most I've ever watched in a draft, and I didn't watch it. Like somehow they meet with, I've watched 9 quarterbacks in this draft, and they didn't meet with them. But so of the names you mentioned, they're all intriguing. I think the depth in this quarterback position in general is pretty intriguing because there's quite a few guys that have, starter talent that are probably going to go in day 3, but they have an opportunity maybe 3 years down the road if everything goes right. Perhaps they're a starter. Who knows? I think the issue I have with both Tanner McKee and Jake Hayner, I think first with Hayner, like if you're talking about just like the film, Larry, in terms of like playing the quarterback position, like playing with timing, playing with anticipation, throwing with accuracy, all of that, I think Jake Hayner is probably, one of the best watches in the entire draft. The issue I have is Jake Hayner looks like he's running in quicksand all the time. He is very, very slow-footed. And that's when you bring up like the Brock Purdy comparison, Brock Purdy's athleticism, I think, was the one thing that everybody didn't know was this much. That he had this much movement to him. He had this much quickness to him. Jake Hayner is the exact opposite. He's very slow-footed. And so that's a concern for me right there with him. Same thing with Tanner McKee. The movement and the mobility. I mean, if we're talking about an offense that, we want to get away from Jimmy Garoppolo and get back to play action, get back to boots, all these different things that came back into this offense with Brock Purdy, you want guys that have the athleticism to be able to do that. And both of those guys, I'm not sure if they have that athleticism. For me, Dorian Thompson-Robinson is probably my favorite day 3 quarterback. I think they should draft one regardless. I think Thompson-Robinson's actually a good fit. He's played a lot. He's good throwing short, intermediate. He's got a cannon of an arm, and he's a very good athlete. So there's potential there for him to be further than the player he is because he's got, an NFL caliber arm or an above average NFL arm, and he's an above average NFL athlete. Like those two things will give him a chance. But he's my favorite of the day 3 guys for sure.
Which guy?
I think Dorian Thompson-Robinson.
Oh, DTR.
But
DTR.
I like Hayner too. I like McKee to an extent. Clayton Tune has some talent too. So there's a few guys there, Larry. I think they should take a quarterback. They have to. This is not the kind of draft. Like you can't just sit here and tell me you're happy with Trey Lance, Sam Darnold, and that's just going to be your quarterback room. I feel like every draft you just got to take a guy and develop him. Look, you hit a home run with Brock Purdy in the 7th round. Why not take another chance on a day 3 guy? It's the quarterback position. It's the most important position. Bill Walsh used to say you should draft a quarterback every year. Every year.
He's right.
Yeah. Belichick used to draft a quarterback. Belichick has drafted a quarterback every year. So I think they should draft one regardless. And DTR would be my pick of those guys because it's something you mentioned earlier, right? You mentioned you don't want quarterbacks drafted that can develop into being backups. You want guys with the talent to be starters. If we're looking at day 3 in this draft, to me, DTR is the one guy I would say that has the most talent to be the starter because the arm is much stronger than a Hayner, than even a Tanner McKee, than a Clayton Tune, and then he's a better athlete than all those guys by a pretty considerable amount as well.
All right. I've thought a lot about this. Stetson Bennett really is polished, and there's a lot to like about him. But, sub 6 feet, I kind of wonder about just his ability to operate in the NFL. Tanner McKee is 6'6", 225, throws strikes, has huge arm talent. I mean, this guy's got arm talent. I mean, when I say
Yeah, I
arm talent,
agree.
this guy's got like Joe Flacco kind of a. This guy can wing it. I mean,
I don't know if
this
it's as
guy.
strong as Flacco. It might be more Mike Glennon than Flacco there.
No, I like the arm of McKee, man. He can zip the out like it's just unbelievable. He throws lasers to the sideline. I don't know if it's because he's 6'6", Vish, or what, but I mean this guy just throws the ball awesome. I mean,
He's
he
a
really
throwback,
throws.
right? He's a
The only
throwback
thing is
watch. This is like
he's just
1990s I formation, big
he,
quarterback that doesn't
yeah.
move a lot, that stands in the pocket, looks to throw it. Yeah.
But the thing is, he doesn't move around well enough, and I think movement ability is a must. The athletes are too fast on defense in the NFL. I don't really believe that there's a whole nother generation of guys who can't move. One of the things that makes Purdy is that it's that 10-yard split. It's that
Right.
escapability. He moves exceptionally well. I really like Clayton Tune, the intangibles, everything he's done, but I think there's a big transition there. I love DTR for the experience, and I really think DTR is going to have a decent NFL career. And Jake Hayner is a winner. He's cocky. He's Aiden O'Connell. I think is a smart player, but also kind of a pocket player. But
With
I'll tell you
Hayner, the slow footedness comes right back there, right? Like that's another
he's
one. Like he's slow footed.
he's also kind of has bad mechanics at times. He throws off his back foot. He floats balls down the field. But also, I don't know. To me, personality wise, he's such an alpha guy that I don't know that he can come in and be respectful and just sit there and take no reps. And you know what I mean? I think it would just
Hmm.
grind him down, which is good and bad, right? That you don't want guys who are just going to be happy being backups. But at the same time, how's he going to fit in the room if he's just creating all this havoc as the last guy on the depth chart? I like Malik Cunningham from Louisville because
I
when I
know.
watch Cunningham throws it well. He moves better than DTR. He moves better than Tune. Like some of those Tune, I think, and DTR are the guys who move the best on this list. But I think Cunningham moves better than both of them. He throws a really nice ball. I like Cunningham. I like Cunningham as a developmental guy. I think when you see him run, it's like, oh my god, he's a ridiculous runner. I mean, but he also has a good enough arm to like stand there in the pocket and deliver bombs down the field. He's you know he's I don't want to say he's Lamar because Lamar is 6'3". Lamar also is a little bit more of an amazing open field runner, where this guy's just has great speed. He doesn't have the moves of Lamar, but the speed, the arm strength, the capability to make plays out of structure. I like Malik Cunningham, and the other thing is DTR is going to probably go in the third round, fourth round.
You
The
think
Niners
so?
don't have a ton of needs. Yeah, I don't think he's going to go late. I think he's going to go higher. The more I
Okay.
look at him, and McKee, I think is going to go in the second round or third round. I think Tune's going to go second round or third round. I just think that when you look at the needs for the 49ers, there's enough of them that are more important than the next quarterback who's going to. And also, I think the kind of player that they're going to have is probably going to have to be on the practice squad, and so it can't. It's got to be a player that's not quite as good. You're not necessarily
Right.
looking for the
Right.
best
Right.
player. You're looking for the player that can fit the spot that you have to
Right.
offer.
Right.
So
Right. Right.
I think Cunningham would be perfect in the Niners scheme as as a developmental player who's got huge upside, starter potential.
He just doesn't feel like a Shanahan quarterback to me. Like I feel like DTR when we talk about him, I'm actually with you. To me, his talent is the guy who should go in the third or fourth round. I don't exactly know how that projection is working. I know a lot of people were saying sixth round pick earlier in the process, but he's more talented than a sixth round guy. I think the issue is Cunningham is so raw in terms of being able to play from the pocket and all of that. I can't remember any quarterback other than RG3 really that Shanahan has drafted that didn't have, some sense of they've played in a pro style offense and have had some success playing from the pocket and playing, what Shanahan calls the right way. Like I can't remember them ever even considering a quarterback from that standpoint. And it feels like Shanahan has always been so anti that. And then let alone the fact, Larry, I don't remember the last quarterback Shanahan has taken that has that skill set, or if he's ever taken one and refined it. He usually likes quarterbacks that have, a basic rudimentary skill set to be able to run his offense. Now, that guy might not be the most talented guy in the world, but that guy usually is pretty accurate, short, intermediate. He's pretty poised in the pocket. He's pretty tough. He processes the right way. He's able to get you in and out of the right checks based on, when you motion, if they shift over a gap and you need to, change the run play, a lot of stuff like that. So Malik Cunningham just feels so far away from that.
I think it's funny. I think you, as listening to you describe that, I think he can do all those things.
You think so?
Yeah, I do. I really do. Now, I don't think he can do them day one as a starter, but I think potentially he can do them.
Which is the quarterback that Shanahan has gotten to do those things though yet?
Well, I mean, I just think that when you look at quarterbacks. I mean, and it may not be Cunningham. It may be like Bonner, because Bonner also, I think, moves pretty well. But I think mobility is going to be something that I would prioritize. And by the time that I think the 49ers will be looking for that quarterback, it may be after the draft. So like a lot of these guys that I do like all those guys we talked about, McKee, Bennett, Hayner.
You just think they'll go too early for the 49ers.
I think
the 49ers don't need to look at quarterback that early. Like we're talking 7th round pick, your later picks, once you've drafted that right tackle, that safety. You're right. Okay, that's fair.
I just think that they may be looking at Bonner and Malik Cunningham types, and I like those two guys. By the way, special thanks to the sponsor of today's show, New York Style Italian Sausage. Check them out, NewYorkStyleSausage.com. Often imitated, never equaled. I'm a big fan of the Italian mild. The Italian
came out of nowhere.
The Italian spicy is also really good. I got to throw some love to our sponsors. 3 topics left. All right.
Okay.
So I want to shout out some friends of mine. One is the great Jordan Elliott. Are you familiar with Jordan Elliott?
Of course I am. Spash_cousin.
There you go.
There we go.
He's phenomenal. And he wrote an article that really resonated with me. And the article is entitled, that's at Niners Nation. You should all go check it out. Why Ohio State edge rusher Zach Harrison is a perfect fit for the 49ers. And I have done at least a dozen or so mock drafts in advance of next month's draft. And I keep going on different mock drafts because they have the players rated differently and this and that. Right. But man, when I get down to 99, because I don't trade up, I just sit and pick at 99. Harrison is almost always the guy that I want to pick, and I'm just a huge Zach Harrison fan. It's funny. And Jordan Elliott says everybody has a type. You do, I do. John Lynch and the Niners do, and their type is, basically he's saying Zach Harrison of the Ohio State Buckeyes, who was a 5-star recruit coming out of college, and then was coached up by the great defensive line coach Larry Johnson, who just coached Nick Bosa. He's coming off of a very productive year. He had multiple pressures in 11 of 13 games. He was a team captain. He was a team captain in 2021. He had 11 sacks, 4 forced fumbles during his college career, but he's 6'5.5", 274 pounds. Which is, he's got 36 and a quarter inch arms, which would place him in the 98th percentile.
Trent Baalke somewhere is just.
Well, that's what he's saying. He's saying that the 49ers type is these long arm pass rushers who basically, have these incredible measurables. And Harrison, 36 and a quarter inch arms, 98th percentile, wingspan of 85.5 inches, 97th percentile at the position. He says he reminds him a lot of Charles Omenihu, and Omenihu is 6'5 and 3/8, 280 pounds, with also 36-inch arm length and an 85.5-inch wingspan. Harrison's 6'5", 274, 36 and a quarter arm length, 85.5 wingspan. I mention this because, man, I've done a bunch of these mock drafts, and I keep coming back to this player. And I just think defensive end is clearly, I don't know what's the primary need. Right tackle, defensive end, corner, safety, tight end. I mean, to me, it's between offensive tackle and defensive end. And the Niners always seem like they prioritize defensive ends. And this guy, 5-star player who didn't play like a 5-star player early in his Buckeye career, but when you watch him on film, you can see those 5-star traits. He's the prototype, and this guy's more of a prototype than Nick Bosa himself. I mean, as far as size, speed, this is exactly what the great defensive end prospects are supposed to look like. So I thought, he's describing him as a perfect fit for the 49ers. I agree with Jordan Elliott. I think if you're saying give me a perfect fit at the positions of need for a defensive end, I think it's Zach Harrison.
You're kind of putting me on the spot, Krug, because I haven't necessarily studied the defensive ends yet. I have watched Zach Harrison a little bit just because.
Well, no, that wasn't going to be my question.
Defense. Oh, okay.
My question to you was going to be, do you see anybody who's a perfect fit for like for me? Zach Harrison from the Buckeyes is a perfect fit defensive end. Michael Mayer from Notre Dame is a perfect fit tight end for what the Niners need. Julius Brents from K-State, big 6'3" corner, perfect fit for what I think the 49ers need at corner. Jalen Duncan from Maryland, what I think is a perfect fit for what they need at right tackle. And Keaton Mitchell from East Carolina, or this Anabaconda kid from Pitt, both of them running the 4.3s. To me, those are the kind of speedy, dynamic running backs I think I'd love to see them add. But is there a perfect fit that you see anywhere for the 49ers in this draft?
Unfortunately, no, because I never watched, for me, in terms of studying players, just because it takes so long before the draft, I don't like doing the 3rd, 4th, 5th round guys that are projected there. This is the first year I went that deep with the quarterbacks, but that was more so because I was more interested in that rather than it being a thing. So I have not watched anything in the draft thinking about the 49ers at all.
Fair.
I've only watched quarterbacks, and then I've watched corners. I've seen Witherspoon, Christian Gonzalez. I've seen Brent, if you want to talk about perfect fit players, sure. I think Brent goes probably before the 90s.
Julius Brents,
Right, yeah. Joe Juwan Williams he went in the top 40 picks of the draft. Right. This is a pretty similar evaluation to that. So I wouldn't be surprised if he goes a little bit higher. Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised if the Niners went corner a couple times on day 3, because the more I look at the draft, the more I see a lot of these really kind of super intriguing day 3 corners, some of them from small schools. I just did a thing.
Riley Moss is pretty good.
Riley Moss.
He was a surprise for me.
Darrell Luter from South Alabama is an interesting player. And there's another one, Rajon Wright from Oregon State is another long corner. I think it's going to be there probably day 3. There's just a lot of, the more I looked at the board, the more I thought, man, there's a lot of really intriguing corners with size that are probably going to be on the board in round 3 that they'll have their, they'll have maybe 1 or 2 picks at who they want in that category.
Size and can run too. The corners across the board, they can run. That's a big deal. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a deep corner class. It's a good one.
Well, and if you say, what do the Niners need at corner? They need a big, when I say 6'2", 6'3", dominant, like a Xavier Rhodes kind of a, thinking of him a few years ago coming out of Florida State. They just need that Ramsey type. They need a big, dominant number 1 corner. They really have never had that.
Well, it's hard. It's hard to find that guy in the 3rd round. Usually you got to be picking in the top 15. True. What round was that? I think that was the 5th.
A 5th round, yeah.
That was an absolute
great
steal.
Pick.
That was an absolute steal. But typically, right, when we're thinking of the best corners of our lifetime, what was Revis, the 12th pick in the draft? Champ Bailey was the 4th pick in the draft. Woodson was the 4th pick in the draft. Sanders was the 5th pick in the draft. Across the board, usually these guys go in the top 15, 20 picks. Even Xavier Rhodes, I think Xavier Rhodes was the 27th or 28th pick in the draft. They picked Cordarrelle Patterson, Sharif Floyd, and Xavier Rhodes all in the 1st round that year. Rick Spielman picked that. By the way, Larry, you should
That's a
check
hell
out
of a.
what Rick Spielman has been doing at CBS. He's been one of my favorite new watches of this draft time ever since he entered the media. He's been
Oh,
quite
he's
good, and I think
terrific.
you would
Well, he's
enjoy him too.
real.
Yeah.
He's a real talent evaluator, and he's doing. Are you talking about videos that he's doing?
Videos, all the stuff. That's been like the new edition of draft coverage that I've been watching because he's been. I usually
Where do
like
you
my
catch him,
favorite
Vish?
guy.
Where do you watch him?
He's on YouTube, dude.
On
Like they
YouTube.
post clips of like some of the stuff they do from their shows, and he's been one of the more like interesting watches. Like better. Like I don't necessarily like. I know Mike Tannenbaum's on ESPN, and I know he's also a former GM, but to me, it's not as insightful to the process as Rick Spielman seems to be. Like Rick Spielman to me feels like he's still doing the process, like he's the GM.
Yeah.
He's
he's
just
awesome.
not. Yeah, he's just in media. So it's
He's
really cool to
tremendous.
listen to all the insight. And he's a football lifer. Like the stuff he says, all of the oh my God. Yeah.
It's great.
So
He's
fun
real.
to listen to him. Yeah.
He's a real personnel guy. And you're getting a real look at it. Elvis says, how's it going, Larry and Vish? Shout out from Sydney, Australia. Love listening to you both and content on our 49ers. Let's go Niners. Elvis is in the building. Did you like that? Did you like that? Elvis is in the building.
Not your best, Krug. Little dad jokey.
All righty. Absolutely. All right. I want to shout out another friend. So that was Jordan Elliott who wrote about Kyle Harrison. Great little piece there. Niners.
Zach.
What's that?
Zach Harrison.
Oh, about Zach. I'm thinking about Kyle Madsen here. Zach Harrison. That's right. That was Jordan Elliott who wrote about Zach Harrison. But now I want to shout out another one of my friends, and that is a guy that I worked with at 95.7 The Game. The great Kyle Madsen, who writes for Niners Wire, which is a subsidiary of the USA Today. Are you familiar with Niners Wire, Vish?
Probably. Okay. Not off the top of my head, but I'm sure I've read articles from there for sure. Yeah, probably.
Yeah. I mean, Niners Wire, they do a lot of good stuff. And my man, Kyle Madsen, has an article up right now, and it's entitled 6 free agents who could help the 49ers. Now, I saw it right before the show, and I wanted to give Madsen a little love, and I want people to go check out his article, but I haven't looked at the 6 names that he's got down here. So I'm going to do this live with you organically.
All right, let's do it.
And we'll see what we got. Okay. Number 1 on the list of Kyle Madsen's 6 free agents the Niners should still look at. All right, I agree. I agree with number 1. He's got Marcus Peters from the Baltimore Ravens, the veteran corner. He says, in 2 years, he said he had only 1 interception last year while allowing 5 touchdowns with Baltimore. But in the 2 years prior, he hauled in 10 picks and allowed 10 touchdowns. He's a risk taker, but putting him in a defense coached by Steve Wilks with a veteran like Tayshaun Gibson at safety could help mitigate some of the risk taking. He likes Marcus Peters. I think that's a tremendous name. Peters runs a little hot. Sometimes he'll lose his temper on the sidelines. Sometimes he just starts losing it out there on the field. But the dominant number 1 traits of a corner, I mean the traits of a dominant number 1 corner, he still has it.
I don't like that one at all.
You don't like Marcus Peters?
No, to play in this defense, they value their corner being able to replace in the run game a lot, right? Like Kyle Shanahan immediately ripped Diamador Lenore after the Raiders game because he was late replacing a couple of times. And when you're late replacing and you got to make an open field tackle, you're kind of screwed one-on-one against Josh Jacobs. Marcus Peters is historically inconsistent in the run game. Inconsistent at being aggressive, being on his P's and Q's in the run game. He takes way too many chances. The Niners like their defense to be as disciplined as possible. They like people to do their job first, not take chances first. It just I don't understand how that one fits at all, let alone the scheme fit. It doesn't even make sense.
I don't know. I love this guy. I love this guy's
tenacity. The player's talent, Larry, if we're talking about like individual players' talent, 100% Marcus Peters had big time talent.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know if he's still the same player coming off of the injury. He didn't look that way last year, but maybe another year removed, he still got that, big time talent. But in terms of fit for the 49ers, that one just does not make sense to me.
Okay. I like that one, Madsen, but Vish says no. Let's go to number 2.
Oh gosh.
Well, I like it. I like Marcus Peters. I think you got to have a couple guys in the room that are
That
just
are unhinged.
straight. Well, that are just that show up because they just love to play. And I just think, I don't know. I'm partial to Peters because my buddy's his agent, I guess, but he's also he's also just a dominant number 1 corner that I think has unbelievable swagger, and I think he gives a defense swagger. So I like it. Let's go to number 2 on this list.
1 second. The comment section is saying Balky passed on him for Jimmy Ward. No, Balky passed on him, traded back, and took Eric Armstead.
Yeah. Did he trade back, or did he just take Armstead 1 pick
Remember?
in front of him?
Chargers traded up for Melvin Gordon, and they traded back 2 picks and picked Armstead at 17. They had the 14th pick.
But didn't Peters go 18?
Yeah. So traded back.
He went 1 pick after.
Yeah. But they traded back. They were originally at 14, and I think a lot of people were projecting Peters at the time. But or Armstead. Armstead was Armstead was the one bulky pick that everybody got right? Everybody projected they would pick Eric Armstead, and they actually picked Eric Armstead in 2015. But yeah,
it was like we don't leak. Really? Everybody says you're picking Armstead. We pick Armstead. I mean, it was like, I don't know about that. Okay, number 2 on Kyle Madsen's list of free agents from Niners Wire. Another one that I've already thrown out to you before. Matt Ioannidis, who was played for Steve Wilkes in Carolina. He says he's familiar with Wilkes. It's a logical fit. He had 35 pressures, 26 hurries, so it gives you a little bit as a pass rusher. And rotation defensive lineman, nice depth add. I agree with Madsen. I think Ioannidis is the kind of tough guy, high motor guy that you can't go wrong with Ioannidis. I think he's scheme versatile. You can play him inside. He can play the run inside and give you a little pass rush. You could play him outside. He's got a motor. To me, I'll go to war with Matt Ioannidis.
Yeah, I'll agree on that one. Yeah,
you like Ioannidis?
That one would make sense, 100%.
Number 3 on the list, Isaiah Wynn from the Patriots. What do you think? Isaiah Wynn's not really built like a tackle. They say they're going with Colton McKivitz. If you're really going with Colton McKivitz, I don't think bringing in Isaiah Wynn is going to make that a good situation. I think if you're going to give McKivitz the start, you can't go after a guy like Wynn. Wynn needs to start.
Yeah, with Wynn, it would depend on the money, right?
Right.
Like, they clearly want to stay cheap at the right tackle position right now while they figure out who's going to be the long-term answer. And so it would just depend, right? I can't see them shelling out like 1 year, $8 million or $6 million with a lot of incentives for Isaiah Wynn. They don't seem to be that desperate. They seem to be very happy with that 2 year, $4 million number with Colton McKivitz. And then I'm sure they'll get somebody developmental in the draft. Wynn, by the way, I noticed some people were talking about it in the comments, or Greg Khan specifically is talking about it in the comments. Yeah, the Wynn pick, Wynn actually playing tackle in the NFL. New England drafting him as a tackle was surprising to me. I thought he was always going to do the Elijah Vera Tucker's shift to guard.
I know. Yeah, no, he's played tackle. He's played right tackle, because I think ultimately what it comes down to is that you can't play right tackle in the NFL if you can't kick out against speed rushers.
Right.
And he's got the ability to do that. And so they'll forgive.
Good enough to do that.
Yeah, where a guy like McGlinchey, I think that's part of the reason that the Niners are not paying McGlinchey is I don't think he consistently kicks out against speed, and then what happens is he gets overwhelmed, and then he's crushed.
He overcompensates and he gets bull rushed.
Exactly. Here, a couple more on this one. He says Tom Compton, Tom Compton is exactly the kind of player you're talking about. I could see them adding a guy like that.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind that one, actually. He wasn't too bad. Actually, in some ways, he helped their run game when he played in 2021. Now, he's horrible in pass protection, but he moves well in the run game, Larry. He's not the worst guy in the run game in the world.
No. I think Compton might be an interesting guy. Wynn would cost more. Compton's got experience. He would come at a cheaper price. Last 2 guys on the list, he's got Akeem Hicks who was in Tampa this year. And then he's got Shaq Griffin, the former Seahawk who went to Jacksonville for big money and then got cut. What do you think of those two guys, Shaq Griffin or Akeem Hicks?
So Akeem Hicks would be awesome, but the Niners have refused to sign that kind of player. I guess they went after Sue midseason, but typically they've stayed away from these higher profile veterans that, teams in their championship window usually sign to pad their roster, right? Like they've stayed away from bringing in a Justin Houston, even though he's had 8-9 sacks every single year. They haven't brought in Akeem Hicks. They didn't bring in Ndamukong Suh and stuff like that. So, I mean, Akeem Hicks, when he's healthy, is still a pretty good player. He's just very, very inconsistent in terms of being healthy. And then Shaq Griffin, I wouldn't mind, Larry, but again, it would just have to be a guy that they would bring in league minimum, veteran minimum. I think they would rather bring in Shaq Griffin if he stays unsigned, not bring him in as a camp body. But, when we enter preseason, if they're not very happy with their corner position, get a guy like Shaq Griffin then. If you've noticed, Larry, a lot of these veteran players, because of the increase of the veteran minimum, teams just don't want to sign them. They want to just draft people, see how the draft goes, and then, if the guy isn't good enough, okay, Tayshaun Gibson, we'll give you the veteran minimum. You won't make the roster. You're going to be on our practice squad, but you're going to play on game day because financially it makes more sense, and you're a better football player than the guy we had. But we would rather have, Ambry Thomas counting towards your cap than you. And so it's kind of an approach. And so I wouldn't expect Shaq Griffin to get signed by the 49ers if he did today or even after the draft. I'd imagine that would happen way later in the process if they went after a guy like that, because that's kind of been their MO ever since the veteran minimum has increased.
Fish and Chips says we're cruising at 15,900 subs. Good to see. Greg T says just hit the like button, get Larry to 100. All right, last topic before we hit the starred chats. We got a few starred chats we're going to roll through at the end.
All right.
But here's the last topic. I did a tweet today, which you follow me on Twitter. You could probably see my tweet. And I'll just read you the tweet. Okay. I said, based on what I've heard from Kyle Shanahan, John Lynch, and Jed York, I expect Trey Lance will be traded during the 2023 draft. My guess is he'll be dealt to the Titans for Malik Willis and a pick swap that gives the 49ers a day either 1 or 2 pick as well. With that pick, they'll fill a major roster need with one of these options, and I threw out Michael Mayer, Deontay Banks, Kalijah Cansey, Adi Tamiwa Adibare, Cody Mauch, Isaiah Foskey. I probably should have put Zach Harrison in there as well, because Harrison, I think, I could see them going after. All right, so that was the tweet that I put out.
I did not see this tweet somehow. Did it blow up? I'm sure the Niners.
It's got 283,000 views.
Oh, geez. All right. Well, I've been on.
Is that possible? Is that even possible? Is that even possible?
To my defense, I've been off of Twitter basically the entire day.
It has 283,000 views.
All right, let's go look for this exact tweet right now on your profile so I can.
I only did this tweet at 11 o'clock this morning.
Okay,
that's a boatload of views. I didn't think.
Oh wow, you've tweeted a lot today, Larry.
I've been very aggressive tweeting, but I want to talk about this one. I want to talk about this one tweet, and I want to talk about this one topic. I've been thinking about the Trey Lance situation. I've been thinking about the 49ers situation. I think the 49ers are going to trade Trey Lance on draft day. And I know a lot of people are like, you're rooting for it. I'm not rooting for it. I'm only rooting for it if they get a good trade. If they don't get a good trade, I'm rooting for them to keep him, because at the end of the day, I'm rooting for the Niners. But this is the way I see it. Tell me what you think. This is my reasoning on it, Vish. I'll lay out my reasoning and you tell me what you think. I think it makes a lot of sense on a lot of different fronts. Okay, why does it make sense for the Titans? Rand Carthon is their first year GM. He was part of the Niner front office when they drafted Trey. He likely knows and likes Trey Lance. Carthon's timeline to build in Tennessee is ideally suited to Lance's needs. Lance needs to play right now. And Rand can give Lance time right now. Then you've got the fact that Lance actually tweeted the fingers crossed emoji when Carthon got that job. It would be one thing if he had tweeted it before he got the job, but he tweeted it after he got the job.
Didn't we establish that fingers crossed emoji actually means like wishing someone luck?
I don't know if I buy that.
Google said that.
I don't know. I don't know if I buy that. But
okay, fair enough.
Let me just throw this out there.
Okay, continue.
So there's that circumstantial thing, whatever that means. Tannehill, I looked up Tannehill's situation. Tannehill is entering the final year of his contract. He's got no more guaranteed money left on his deal. Carthon's rebuilding the Titans. He's already cut Taylor Lewan, Ben Jones, Bud Dupree, Zach Cunningham, and Robert Woods. And they're supposedly shopping both Kevin Byard, who's their best defensive player outside of Simmons, and Derrick Henry, who's their star running back. So they're looking to rebuild. And if you're the Titans, you could move forward. I mean, to me, it's like you since you can move forward without Tannehill, you're not connected to Tannehill. They've shown no indication that they're going forward with Tannehill publicly this offseason. They haven't said anything about Tannehill. They just kind of let him dangle there. So they have not committed to Tannehill in any way, shape, or form verbally. And I looked this up, nowhere on social media. Tennessee doesn't believe, I don't think, in Malik Willis, because Malik Willis really struggled last year. But they've been quietly studying all of the rookie quarterbacks, and yet they pick 11th, and the top 4 rookie quarterbacks are all slated to go, before 10. So they could be looking at, they're not going to get Bryce Young or Richardson or CJ Stroud or the guy from Kentucky. They're not going to get any of those guys. So they're going to be looking at, if they want a replacement, and it sounds like they do you like Trey Lance or do you like Hendon Hooker? Do you like Tanner McKee? Do you like Jake Haener? And I think most people would say they like Trey Lance more than those guys. So from Tennessee's perspective, I think it makes perfect sense. Now let's flip it over from the Niner perspective. The Niners have made it perfectly clear. Brock Purdy is their number 1 quarterback, and he's 23 years old. And Trey Lance, as a 22-year-old player who needs to play, is not the ideal backup for Brock Purdy. So there's also talk around the NFL that there are people that believe that when Brock Purdy gets healthy, he is clearly the 49ers' number 1 quarterback. Then you had John Lynch come out at the combine and say that Trey needs to play right now, but he's not really slated to play right now, except for the first month of the year, because it sounds like they're totally wed on going to Brock Purdy. So then you have Lynch in Arizona this week telling the reporters, talking to the reporters for the first time, and actually for the first time left open the possibility of a trade when he said, we like Trey on our team right now. And then Shanahan, what did he do when he sat down this week? He praised Sam Darnold. I've always liked him. He's got as good a skill set as there is. I mean, as there is. You're talking about one of the worst statistical quarterbacks in all of football, and Kyle Shanahan is professing his love for him and saying he's got as good a skill set as there is. So then you got Shanahan also reiterating that the Niners will listen to trade offers for a quarterback this spring. They've been telling you that they love Purdy, and they just brought in Darnold, and he's praising Darnold. So the quarterback they're listening to trade offers for is Trey Lance. There's no doubt about that. I mean, then he said that if Lance is in camp, that him and Darnold will share reps. So obviously, when you hear that Trey Lance will share reps with Sam Darnold, the first thing I think of, Vish, is Sam Darnold either has gotten a whole lot better or Trey Lance has lost value in the eyes of the 49ers, that now he's on that level. Last year, he was your number 1. This year, he can share camp reps with Sam Darnold. And then the Niners are still looking for rookie quarterbacks. They're at McKee's pro day. They're talking to Logan Bonner. They're meeting with DTR. And yet while they're doing this, Shanahan is saying that he still may only take 2 quarterbacks on the active roster. And then you sit there and go, well, why would they, if they were going to trade Trey Lance, where would they trade him? They wouldn't trade him to the NFC. They'd trade him to an AFC team. And if you're saying, why would Tennessee want Lance? Because I think they're looking at the other quarterbacks in that conference and they're saying, we can't just have a pretty good guy. We've got to swing for the fences. And I think Lance represents that. So if you're asking me what I think reading the tea leaves is going to happen here, I don't know if they're going to trade Malik Willis. I just threw Malik Willis in there because I could see Malik Willis coming to the Niners. The Niners may like some other quarterback in this draft. I said I like Malik Cunningham. You mentioned DTR. But I think they very well could trade Trey Lance and picks to move up either into the first round or into the second round for a big-time player that can make them a better football team this year. To me, this has been a very perplexing time to be a 49er fan because I don't understand what happened to take Trey Lance from he played 4 games and now he only gets to compete with Sam Darnold to be the backup to Brock Purdy. So to me, that's an indication that I don't know what's going on, but I'm pretty sure that Trey Lance has lost equity to some degree in the eyes and minds of the 49ers brass and decision makers. So that's what I think is going to happen. I think they're going to move Trey Lance. I don't know if it'll be Willis, but I think they'll move Trey Lance and a pick, and I think they'll move up into round 2, maybe even round 1, late round 1. And then those players that I named, which is Michael Mayer, Deontay Banks, some of those big time guys at the positions of need, I think they're going to grab one of those players. That's my guess. If you say, what do you think's going to happen? That's what I think's going to happen. Give me your reaction to the way I just laid that out and what you think of it.
That's a lot.
And by the way, Arturo Romero says, Krug, your takes are way too much lately. Get some rest or get some rest.
I mean, okay, first off, here's the thing. I think that everything you said is plausible. Look, I think that a lot of people don't necessarily like to be challenged to be thinking outside of their box of comfortability, especially when it comes to talking about their football team that they like or they're attached to a player. Everything you said to me, from a logical standpoint, there is some credence to it. Now, there's only one part of it that I agree with, and it's the last part you mentioned about there's something that has changed with their feelings about Trey Lance. He went from them, clearing the books and just anointing him and talking him up as the starter, and he has 1 game in a monsoon and 10 snaps for Seattle. Next thing you know, now he's competing with Sam Darnold for a backup job, basically. Now, here's why I disagree with the Trey Lance trade. You and I talked about it a little bit on Tuesday, but the more and more I've thought about it, they would be talking him up if they're looking to trade him. They would be trying to make teams see value in him. How would you see value in a guy that they just told you is going to be competing with Sam Darnold, who's washed out on 2 different teams for the starting job?
They have kind of talked him up by saying that, Jed York, by saying, hey, you know what? We wouldn't do anything differently. We love this kid.
That's because Jed York doesn't want to say he's wrong.
But I mean, I'm just saying they're saying positive things about him, just not his football. They're saying positive things about his personality.
I mean, how many times has John Lynch said how happy he was that Trey Lance, greeted Brock Purdy every time he came off the field? It's the one compliment John Lynch keeps paying him, never about him as a quarterback. Now, I agree. There's whatever it is, they talk about him definitely in a little bit of a weird way, especially because Shanahan was pretty adamant. He said it 3 different times in the owners' meetings and 3 different interviews that he thought Lance was going to have a huge season in 2022. If you thought he was going to have a huge season in 2022, now that Brock Purdy is hurt, he would be the starter in 2023. So I agree that there's something that has changed. I just don't see how they're setting up to trade for him. They have 1 healthy quarterback on the roster right now. That's not even Trey Lance. That's not Brock Purdy. That's Sam Darnold. They're going to draft a quarterback, I think, but even in that case, I think they would need 2 healthy, viable quarterbacks going into the season. I don't think Malik Cunningham is going to be a viable quarterback to be a backup quarterback if they have to go into the season with Brock Purdy not returning by July 28th. They'll only know what happens with Brock Purdy after 3 months removed from the surgery. Right now, we are 21 days removed from the Brock Purdy surgery. So if you're saying Trey Lance could be traded this offseason, I think that's a possibility. Let's say he doesn't beat out Sam Darnold in this camp. Let's say Brock Purdy comes, they find out after 3 months, right, somewhere in June, that Brock Purdy is actually going to come back at July 28th, the date that John Lynch suggested. If that's the case, Sam Darnold has the 15th highest cap hit on this team. He's not getting moved. The guy that would get moved in that case would be Trey Lance. So I agree. There's a possibility he gets moved this offseason. But I think they would have to have great feedback on Brock Purdy's return on the injury, and they would have to see Sam Darnold beat him out in camp for that to happen. In the draft, Larry, I mean, they're going to have to take $11 million loss on his contract. I didn't like the compensation you mentioned, by the way, but then you said that you just threw Malik Willis out for the sake of Malik Willis.
Well, I'm just saying they don't need Malik Willis, and the Niners may want Malik Willis. Who knows? I'm just saying that the 49ers could have Sam Darnold, Brock Purdy, and a rookie quarterback. They could have Sam Darnold, Brock Purdy, and a Malik Willis. The point is they could turn Trey Lance, who, if he doesn't play this year, then what good is he? If he's truly your backup to Brock Purdy and you're going with Brock Purdy, then you're going to be trading Trey Lance at some point. Why not trade him now and in this year when you can add a great player that you could win the Super Bowl with next year?
Because you don't know when Purdy's coming back. That's the important thing. If I trade Trey Lance right now and Purdy, gets...
But Vish, what if Trey Lance isn't even the starter? What if it's Sam Darnold?
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter, though, right? Larry, you would go into a season that, let's say Purdy's coming back week 4. You would go into week 1, week 2, and week 3 with Sam Darnold and Malik Cunningham as your quarterback room as the number 1 contender in the NFC? With your other quarterback rehabbing the entire offseason and coming back week 4?
I'm saying let's not ignore the obvious here. The obvious is we don't know why, but they don't like Trey Lance. I think it's pretty obvious.
I agree with that part, Larry. I think that he could get traded sometime this offseason. If they like Trey Lance, they wouldn't even have Sam Darnold here at $11 million potentially. No, I agree with that, Larry. I agree with that. But you're talking about trading
Trey
him.
Lance.
You're talking about trading him during the draft. They have one healthy quarterback on their roster right now. It's Sam Darnold. I agree. If there's a quarterback that's going to get traded on this roster this offseason, it won't be Brock Purdy. It's not going to be Sam Darnold. It will be Trey Lance, right? Sam Darnold is carrying the 15th highest cap hit on this team. He's not going to be moved. If there's a guy that gets moved this offseason, it will be Trey Lance. It just doesn't make sense to me for them to trade Trey Lance right now during the draft. Like it induces an $11 million cap loss, and they would go into the offseason with Sam Darnold, and you're saying Malik Cunningham, that's their quarterback room, and Brock Purdy coming back, and we don't know. We'll know after the three-month time period when he's going to come back. What if they realize Brock Purdy's coming back week 8, and they've already traded Trey Lance? What are they going to do then?
No, I hear you.
The season with Sam Darnold and Malik Cunningham?
Oh, yeah, exactly. But, the whole thing is, though, John Lynch makes it sound like he may be back for the preseason.
Right. And that's where the disconnect exists, right? Because you have Shanahan, who is maybe a little bit more realistic about the timeline, and then you had John Lynch, who came out here and was like, oh, July 28th, guys. July 28th. Brock Purdy's going to be back. July 28th.
What I'm saying is it's pretty obvious that they don't believe in Trey Lance. There's a lot of us sitting here trying to go, well, why? I don't get it. But we're not in the meetings. We're not meeting. We've never met really Trey Lance. We don't know him. We have no idea what he is as a player. I'm just noticing as they are not saying anything positive about Trey Lance, and they're talking about trades, and Lynch never was talking trades about Lance. This week he did. Shanahan was never talking about trades of Lance. He referenced it this week.
Right.
So what's going on here? And all I'm saying is it sounds like they've moved from, shouldn't this be the go time for Trey Lance? And instead, it's the go time for Sam Darnold. I don't know. To me, it just sounds like if you ask me, because I mean, nobody knows. We don't know. The one thing we can say definitively, and everybody in the chat can say definitively, we don't know. We don't know. We don't know how they feel about Trey Lance. We don't know how they feel about Trey Lance. And I only say specify him specifically is because we kind of do know how they feel about Sam Darnold. And we do know how they feel about Brock Purdy. But they've never said anything complimentary about Trey Lance. So either they love Trey Lance and they just happen to never say anything about it, or they don't love Trey Lance. And if they don't love Trey Lance and he's not even going to be your number 2 if Purdy's healthy, Purdy sounded like he thinks he's going to be healthy. You've got Sam Darnold there. Shanahan's talking about keeping 2 quarterbacks. They're looking at rookie quarterbacks. Aren't these all indications that they're going to trade Trey Lance?
Maybe.
So why is everybody getting mad? Everybody's getting mad at me.
If I was
don't get mad at me because
this offseason, wait, Larry, if I was to trade him this offseason, if I'm the 49ers, I'd have to build up his value somehow. You know how I would do it? I wouldn't just ship him off before the draft. I would go into this offseason and I would keep reporting, oh, Trey Lance is killing it in camp. Trey Lance is killing it in camp, regardless of how he does. If he's actually killing it, bang, he's actually killing it and he's going to start. If he's not actually killing it, I would keep saying, Trey Lance is killing it in camp. Trey Lance is killing it in camp. Boom, 3 months goes by. I know what happens with Brock Purdy's injury. I think Brock Purdy is going to be back for week 1. I think Sam Darnold can, keep us afloat if Brock Purdy has to have those 2 games, whatever. And so because of that, I would build up Trey Lance's value and then ship him off then. When the cap hit post June 1st is less than $11 million, I don't have to take that loss. And I could actually get some sort of, I don't know what return they could get for him right now. They just said that 4 games into his career, he's competing with Sam Darnold to be the backup. It's not exactly.
Wait a second. Wait. We can't. This is another huge inconsistency with the whole Trey Lance thing. He can't be awesome and have this. You're going to move. There are people that want to sit Brock Purdy, who's never really lost a game that he started and finished with the 49ers, for Trey Lance, but we don't know if Trey Lance is any good. I mean, he's either good or he's not good. So he can't be like he can't be so good that he's going to replace Brock, but then so bad that he's not worth anything in a trade. Right?
Wait. Sorry about that. I got a phone call. I got a phone call right there. You kind of cut out for me in between.
I was going to say, we've got people that argue that he should be playing instead of Brock. But then we have people arguing that he's not worth anything in trade. So it's one or the other. It cannot be both. He can't be better than Brock and needs to play, but then also not worth anything in a trade to anybody else. Do you see what I'm saying? He's either got to be good or he's not good, but he can't be good.
Wait, who are you arguing with, though? It sounds like you're arguing with the chat and not arguing with me.
No, I'm not.
I make a point.
No, I'm saying that people are suggesting he's not worth anything, but then other people are suggesting that he needs to play over Brock Purdy right now. So he's either worth some. So it seems like there's a huge difference in opinion in the public between is he worth something and good, or is he not worth anything and not good?
Okay, let's just go off what the 49ers have said, right? Because that's what you went off of to come to this trade scenario, right?
Right.
It's clear something has changed from last year to this year. You and I have established we agree on that. Now, what are the facts if they trade Trey Lance? They lose $11 million and they probably don't recoup the sunk cost that they gave up trading for him. Can we agree
now, wait
on
a
both
second,
of those
though.
things?
I asked Jack Hammer about that. I said, what if they get offered a first-round pick for, and he's like, well, I'm not anticipating that they get offered a first-round pick. I said, but what if they do? And he's like, well, then I go, would you turn down a first round pick because you're going to have a $11 million cap charge that's going to run into this year? Or would you figure out another way to kind of balance your books? And he said, I would figure out another way to balance my books. So I don't know. The cap thing can be massaged and maneuvered. And I mean, to me, it's not really about that. You're not going to turn down a top level player in return for Trey Lance just because of the cap ramifications in the off season when you can do all kinds of different things and restructures to move money around. That's all I'm saying. I'm just saying Either maybe some people would argue.
Yeah. If they offer a first round pick for Trey Lance, sure, that's a completely different conversation. But if they were anticipating receiving a first round pick for Trey Lance, why would they say that he's competing with Sam Darnold this offseason? That's what I'm trying to understand. If they were ready to trade him, would they not be talking up his value right now?
But I'm not saying a first round pick straight up. I'm saying, what if the 49ers said to the Titans, hey, we'll give you one of our third round picks and Trey Lance and a conditional pick in next year's draft, and we want your pick in the first round. And the Titans say, well, we don't want to give you the 11th pick. We say, no problem. Trade down to 18 and keep whatever you get, and then we'll trade you for 18. The Niners could theoretically get into the back half of the first round with a trade involving Trey Lance, especially if it involved other picks. It's not hard to picture at all. Personally, I think once you get to 12, anybody who needs a quarterback is going to be staring at, would I want to trade this pick for Trey Lance, or do I want to draft Hendon Hooker? Well, we don't know. There you go.
We don't know that. We don't know.
No, but I'm saying Hendon Hooker is the next quarterback for a quarterback needy team. They say the top four quarterbacks.
But Larry, like you said, we don't know but we don't know that. We don't know that for sure. It's like you say that like one part of this is conjecture, right? Trey Lance's value, and then you say he's going to go for a first shot. Look, where those top four quarterbacks are going is also conjecture.
I'm saying you have a third round pick. If you traded a third round pick or some combination of picks, you could move up into the first round in the second half of the first round for a player that you wanted. Let's say you wanted Michael Mayer. Let's say you thought Michael Mayer could be George Kittle part 2. You could make that trade.
We've moved completely away from your point now, though. No, you're now suggesting scenarios that we could trade Trey Lance, but your original thing was, hey, I think they're going to trade him this draft during draft time, right?
I do.
Right?
Yeah.
That's your original point.
That's still
my argument against that is that they would talk him up if they were trying to move him.
But they are talking him up.
How? They said he's competing with Sam Darnold.
That's just saying.
That
just means
Sam Darnold that was just an answer. One of the worst quarterbacks ever.
No, they didn't say they're competing with Sam Darnold. He said he's going to split reps in camp.
They said it's a competition. We're looking forward to having both of those guys competing.
Yeah, but they've said they've loved. John Lynch has doubled down, tripled down on how great of a kid Trey Lance is. Jed York just went on and on and on about how they don't have any difference of opinion today than they did on the day that they drafted him. They're trying to create an image that they don't dislike Trey Lance at all. There's no failure of Trey Lance at all. It's all in the Niners. They've excused Trey Lance not becoming the player that they want yet based on circumstance, whether it's legitimate or contrived. That's what they've said. They've said that Trey Lance is really still good. It's not his fault. That's what he thinks. Not his fault means.
Trey Lance would be the starter. So they're talking out of their butt when they say that.
Well, but I'm just saying they are building him up. They're trying to build him up. They're not saying anything bad about him. They're saying that, hey, we love Trey Lance. John Lynch said it. Trey Lance, he said it at the combine.
Well, Krug, if you said that, then why are you suggesting that he was going to trade him in the first place? If he's been saying how much he loves him, then why are you even suggesting he's going to trade him?
Because I just told you why. Because I think that they're saying that to improve his trade value.
So you think that they're talking about him the way they are right now to improve his trade value?
Yes.
So you think when they say that
they added Sam Darnold, you're the one who said they're sharing time. Kyle Shanahan didn't come out and say Sam Darnold and Trey Lance are identical. Grant asked him a question if they would share reps in camp, and Kyle said yes. But they're not saying.
Well, he said it, not me.
Yeah, but that just means that there's going to be some kind of competition. But at no point did Kyle Shanahan say, Trey Lance, we hold Trey Lance in the exact same regard as Sam Darnold. We're just speculating on that. What they have said is a lot of positive things about Trey Lance, about how they still love him and nothing's changed. None of this is his fault, and that he struggled, but it has nothing to do with him and everything to do with circumstance. To me, they're absolutely. John Lynch started his speech at the Combine, Vish, by saying, you know what? Trey's got to play. And that's the challenge, because we got a team that's ready to go. Already he's making excuses saying that Trey's got to play, but it's just they've got a team that's ready to win right now, and he just needs field time because he needs development. I mean, that to me that's not ripping the quarterback. That's actually just kind of being like, that's absolving him of blame. You're basically saying he's not the reason that he's not playing. We're the reason he's not playing because we're at a different level than where he's at. We still believe in him. Jed York said it the other day. We still think he's going to be a very, very good quarterback. They're telling you good things about Trey because I think they're trying to shop him this year. That's my belief. Now, I could be wrong. I've been wrong before.
I disagree with that, but yeah, I don't know because
No?
Every time I say something,
No, you think
I disagree. Yeah, I feel like when they mention certain things about him, I think they would talk about him differently if they were trying to trade him. I really do. And then if we're talking about a trade, the one point that I keep making that you are yet to address is the fact that they are trading him with Brock Purdy's timeline coming back, still being a complete unknown, them having only one healthy quarterback on their roster. Again, if they trade him during the draft and they do what you suggest, which is draft Malik Cunningham or whatever, they could possibly go into the football season with Sam Darnold and Malik Cunningham as their quarterback. I don't think trading Trey Lance off of this offseason is not a possibility. I didn't disagree with that. I think that if there's one quarterback that gets traded this offseason, it would be Trey Lance because Sam Darnold, again, 15 ties cap.
Go ahead.
15 ties cap hit on their team, and then we've got Brock Purdy here. But at the same time, Larry, like, I can't imagine them trading him unless they know that Purdy is going to be back. If Purdy comes back week 8 and they trade Trey Lance at the draft, they look stupid.
Arturo says you compared Purdy to Hurts. Are you kidding me? I was saying they were the same size, the exact same size. That was the comparison.
When was this?
With Grant weeks ago. We were talking about, I was saying to him.
Arturo was really mad about that one then.
No, I actually said it to you. Remember, we were talking about Hurts and Purdy, and I said just 2 pounds. You're like, oh, they're different guys, different types. And I said, no, Vish. One guy's 227, the other guy's 223.
Hurts squats like 1,000,000 pounds, though. That dude's got different legs.
They're different. Well, I mean, Brock Purdy's got thick legs. Caesar Alcazar says Larry is just giving hypothetical speaking. I'm just reading. I'm trying to read the tea leaves. Arturo says, Krug, you don't like Trey Lance, and we know it. It's okay. Arturo, it's called nuance. Please try to understand the difference.
This is my favorite one that gets come at you.
First of all,
you wanted Trey Lance. That's the funny part.
You can Google Pat McAfee, Larry Krueger, and he read my tweet advocating and saying that they were going with Lance before the draft, a week before. He read that on his show. It's there. It's public record. So there you go. I can say it 1,000,000 times, but it's like people just, they hear what they want to hear. I am speculating on a Trey Lance trade, but don't misread this. I'll be pissed at the 49ers if they make a bad trade for Trey Lance. The only reason it's at all intriguing is because Trey Lance might be their only ticket to getting into the first round for a difference-making player. And if they don't think Trey is the guy, and we have like 20 examples of why they don't think Trey's the guy, then why wouldn't you want Michael Mayer? Why wouldn't you want a superstar first round pick? If you could trade Trey Lance and a 3rd round pick and get into the first round and get a first round talent, why would you? Why would you not want that? I think there's plenty of reason to want that if you want to see the 49ers do well. So I understand why people sometimes misconstrue what I'm saying here. Alpha Zer just throws the super sticker. Damn, super sticker.
I guess people like when you and I argue.
I mean, come on. TC's like, Larry is losing his mind, lost his mind over Purdy. It has nothing to do with Purdy. It has zero to do with Purdy. The 49ers have lost their mind over Purdy because the 49ers are the ones that are all in on Purdy. Now, I just told you ahead of time that I thought Purdy was an NFL quarterback, and you guys are associating me now with Purdy love. But, I was actually pissed when they drafted him because I was like, this guy can't do it. It was only after I watched him and studied him
Right.
after the draft that I said, you know what, this guy actually might be able to do it. All right, let's
And
go to
during
the
training camp, I'll never forget that stream. Gosh, you said, I think you predicted that we would be coming into this time this year with Brock Purdy and Trey Lance in a quarterback competition. Like, when did you predict that?
Yeah, I mean last July. But you know, and here's the thing. Vish, your big argument against this is that there's no quarterbacks on the roster. There's no
Yeah.
games. It doesn't. You could have negative quarterbacks in March. There's no games. There's no games. I mean, who
Yeah,
cares?
but this is a team we're talking about win now window Super Bowl aspirations. Like, what
But I
team
mean,
with those aspirations has, Sam Darnold signed off the street for 1
I,
year, $4 million with
true.
incentivized up to
But
$11 million starting week 1?
Lynch is talking like Brock may be back for training camp. They just signed Sam Darnold. They're looking at rookie quarterbacks. They have Trey Lance right now. That's 4. And
He had
they're
surgery 21 days ago, Larry. They'll only know what his timeline is 3 months from now.
well, but I'm just saying Lynch made it seem like he could be back in July.
But you're choosing which one you want to listen to because Shanahan said he could be back week 8, week 12.
Right. I mean, Shanahan also said he could have permanent damage and never be back.
Right.
He's just covering all of his bases.
Yeah.
But I mean, why's I mean, then you don't believe that John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan are on the same page?
I think John Lynch was presenting the, best case scenario of when he's back. I think Shanahan was being more realistic. I think the ultimate point between Shanahan and Lynch, the disconnect there, all it represents to me is that they don't know yet.
Yeah, they don't know yet. But I mean,
that's how would you trade one of the healthy quarterbacks on your roster without knowing?
But you've got Kyle Shanahan calling Sam Darnold has the best skill set of anybody he's ever seen.
Does that then why isn't Sam Darnold just the starter?
I mean, it's maybe that's kind of my point is that maybe, and then you're so if you have Purdy, you have 1. If you have Sam Darnold, you have 2. If you drafted a quarterback, you have 3. Shanahan's already told you that there's a very good chance he's only taking 2 on the roster. So that third quarterback is going to do what? That third quarterback's probably not going to be on the roster.
What happens if you trade Trey Lance right now during draft time? 3 months from now, you find out that Brock Purdy is going to be back week 8. He starts the season on PUP. And what do you do from there?
Yeah, I mean, you're somewhat up a creek at the beginning of the year. You're going with Sam Darnold at that point. But I mean,
let me present this scenario to you. If you want to talk about trading Trey Lance, the only scenario that makes sense to me.
But I mean, you're also assuming, Vish, that Trey Lance is like ready to go, and they're kind of telling you by not even calling him a quarterback, they're calling him a dual threat quarterback. They can't even describe him the way they describe other quarterbacks and the way they used him. That I think it's pretty safe to say by now that they don't either his progress is stalled or at least stalled in their eyes. So maybe they don't view Trey Lance as a real option for them. That's all I'm saying. I'm just trying to read. I'm trying to read that. I don't know.
I agree. See, I agree with you. I feel like you're arguing with the chat sometimes rather than listening to what I'm saying. Because I keep telling you that I think that there is an opportunity here that they could trade him. If there's a guy they would trade this offseason, it would be him. But the scenario you're presenting before the draft, taking an $11 million cap loss and having such an unknown at their quarterback situation doesn't make sense. To me, the one scenario that makes sense, Larry, is 3 months from now, if they know Brock Purdy is going to be back week 1, week 4, they know exactly when he's going to be back, so they have more of a definitive timeline on that. And Sam Darnold, if it's even close between Sam Darnold and Trey Lance, like if it's close to the point where it's like, hey, it's one or the other, it's really they're both kind of the same player right now. If it's that close in camp, then I could see them moving Trey Lance because they might think he's just not going to get the opportunity here. We like Darnold as the cheap backup, and Purdy's going to be back and healthy. But the idea of trading Trey Lance before even knowing when Brock Purdy is going to be back, I just don't buy that. I just feel like they're going to let it play out with him and Darnold this offseason.
I mean, you're probably right. You're probably right. I guess I'm just so geared up on the draft that I want to see them turn. If they don't believe in Trey Lance, okay, fine. I do. They don't. If they don't believe in him, that's fine. But don't just stick him on your bench and have some disgruntled quarterback. Let me ask you this.
Do you think he would be disgruntled? Excuse me. Do you get the vibe that you think he would be disgruntled?
No, I mean, I know he'll be disgruntled. I mean, come on, you're picked third to play. Nobody wants to sit. You want to play, I think. I mean, I don't. I mean, nobody said that to me, but come on. I think the part of this that we don't know is that probably somebody on Trey Lance's side was like, John, Trey's got to play. Like, Trey's got to play. And then what if you're John Lynch and you're faced with that? Trey's got to play. And you know that if you get what you want, which is Brock Purdy healthy in a good amount of time, Trey's not going to play. Doesn't that kind of almost make you then start going into, well, what could I get for Trey? What could we turn Trey into? That's all I'm saying. I'm just trying to read
the scenario that I just laid out of the possibility he could get traded.
But all I'm saying is
I'm not disagreeing that there's a chance he could get traded right now. It's they talk about him a certain way that feels like something has changed between 22 and 23. You would be not
your
looking
scenario
at every
is different than
possibility
mine.
to not suggest that. But all I'm saying is you would have to have more of a definitive with Brock Purdy. The guy had surgery 21 days ago, Larry. How can you trade him without even knowing what's going on with Brock Purdy's injury?
Yeah, no, I hear you. But it's like if you have sunk Trey Lance to Sam Darnold territory and now he's competing to be the backup.
Wait, I'm not going to let you get away with that one. No. You just told me 5 minutes ago that I was wrong for speculating that Sam Darnold and Trey Lance are on the same level. And now you're saying that Sam Darnold and Trey Lance, if you have resigned, that Trey Lance is in Sam Darnold territory?
Well, I mean, you've said positive things about Sam Darnold that you have not said about Trey Lance. So I don't know where
Come on, Larry. Come on.
Well, that's what I'm talking about, Vish. That's exactly what I'm talking about. That's why I think he's going to be traded.
Here, though.
No, I'm not. That's exactly why he's going to be traded.
Because my original point about him being traded was that if they were trying to trade him, they would talk him up more. And you said that.
You're assuming they're not.
Can I?
But they are.
But wait, my point. Okay, can I just?
I can't disagree.
No, you can't disagree with you. No, of course you can.
Okay.
It's your show.
No, I disagree. You keep saying that. I think your premise is wrong. Your premise is that they've never built him up. I'm saying they do build him up. They are building him up.
Okay, right. And your premise with that was that you said I was speculating that they were putting Trey Lance and Sam Darnold on the same level. Right? You said that was my speculation. Now you just said that I would think that they're going to trade them based on, the prep. You said that you're reading the tea leaves and you think they're going to trade them because they've resigned the fact that they've put Trey Lance on Sam Darnold's level. It's one or the other.
I guess I'm reading it as the same level. They just haven't told us what they believe on Trey Lance, right? They haven't said bad things about Trey Lance. They just haven't said good things about Trey Lance. But they have said good things about Sam Darnold. I'm just trying to read their thinking, right? It's the off season. We have no connection to these guys. They've talked up Brock Purdy to a level that it's obvious Jed, John, and Kyle believe that Brock Purdy's their best quarterback. That's not debatable. That's clear. They've now talked up Sam Darnold, at least Kyle has talked up Sam Darnold in a crazy way. I mean, as good a skill set as there is? Really? All I'm saying is that I'm reading the tea leaves. They don't seem like they're saying that they're not saying positive things about Trey, the football player, but they are saying positive things about him. They're trying to sell us. When you say positive things about anybody, you're trying to sell us something. You're trying to sell us something. So when they keep saying that Trey's a great guy, they're selling somebody who we're already fans of the team. So who are they selling? Every time they say Trey's a great guy, why are they saying that?
What if they're just being honest about him?
Right. But I mean,
Because
they don't say anybody else is a great guy.
Because here's my thing. Because I agree with your point, right? Like something has changed from 22 to 23 for Lance to go from being the starter to having to compete with Sam Darnold. What I'm confused about is when I originally disagreed with this point of him being traded during the draft, which is actually really the only thing you and I are really disagreeing on in this entire thing. You said that one of my reasons was I felt like if they were going to trade Trey Lance immediately, I think they would talk him up more. And at the time, and I said that if they were going to trade him, they wouldn't let the entire world know that he's in a competition with Sam Darnold. And your response to that was that I'm the one saying that him and Sam Darnold are on the same level. Kyle Shanahan never said that. Now, 2 minutes ago, you said that you're reading the tea leaves because they just put him in.
But that was just an answer.
You just said 2 minutes. You just said 2 minutes ago then that you're one of the things that you're reading on the tea leaves about them trading him is that they've put him on Sam Darnold's level. So like I'm just confused because I feel like with my response you said they didn't do that, and then now you just said the same exact thing.
Well, no, it's there's nuance to this. I mean, there's nuance to this, Vish. I mean, there's what you're saying is that they're not complimenting him. That's not true. They are complimenting him.
I never said they didn't compliment him. I said would talk. I said they would not let the entire world know that he's in a competition with Sam Darnold if they were trying to trade him. That's what I said.
I think the whole thing was Sam
they're
Darnold.
Not on the same level.
Well, I'm just saying they're now sharing. They're going to share reps, but that wasn't something that they volunteered out there. That was an answer to a question that was a direct question from Grant. So that was just that wasn't what they wanted to put out there. That was just an answer. My point on the Darnold Trey thing is that I'm reading the tea leaves of what they're saying about Trey and what they've said about Darnold. And it's even though we think they shouldn't trade Trey, they clearly seem to be entertaining it. And John, I thought, referenced it a couple times here. And I think Kyle did too. So all I'm saying is I'm just reading their tea leaves and going, if you're going to trade him, man, it would be nice if you got, since this year is a kind of a big year for them, it'd be nice if you could get a player this year that you could use, as opposed to like the other thing is you don't look at it as problematic to keep Trey on the roster all year and not play him, because that's what's going to happen if Brock Purdy if Brock Purdy is there and Brock Purdy plays well and is healthy, Trey's not going to play. So are you okay? Do you think that's going to be a good situation to have Trey sitting there again, not playing? That's where I think this thing starts to lose, where the Niners start to lose value.
I agreed with you, Krug, that there's a chance he could get moved this offseason. Have I not said that?
You said that if there was one quarterback that was going to be moved, it would be him. Yeah.
I could see him being moved this offseason. I have not disagreed with any of those things. The one thing is the timeline. But I feel like you're talking about a scenario that like I haven't even sat here and considered. I'm just saying, wait 3 months till we know what's going on with Brock Purdy.
Well, of course.
That's been my point this entire time. That's what I'm saying. I feel like you've been arguing with the chat instead of me this entire time.
No, I'm not arguing with the chat. I'm playing the super chats. Let me hit them before I lose everybody here. Spare Parts says, can you guys, Larry and Vish, do a tandem mock draft together? Okay, we could possibly do that.
Close to the draft process, right before the draft in April.
Oh, it's Paul Perriman, come on, Krug. Shanny's MO is to piecemeal the O-line. We talked about that earlier. He says Antonio Sosa agreed. Sidney Brown, Daniel Scott, Jason Taylor the second could be possible depth safety picks. He's got some cornerback picks that are interesting there as well. We got this one from Alpha who says, can someone please explain why the 49ers draft such a raw quarterback like Trey Lance when it just doesn't line up with their Super Bowl window? They might not have known. Edge, Zach Harrison, Ali Gay, Yaya Diaby. Okay, and I've put some of these in here too. Wait a second down here. Oh, here we go. Miguel Ruiz. He says, Larry, I don't care who the quarterback is. I just want the Niners to win. If it's Brock, I just want that moron to step up in the pocket so he doesn't get his arm ripped off again. Wow.
Well, it sounds like you do care who it is because you just called one of them a moron.
Just called him a moron. I'm not sure why. Gammon Brown. Larry's logic, if someone got fired from 2 different jobs, Sam Darnold, then they can take someone's job that they can't even keep their own. I didn't sign Sam Darnold. I'm the one who told you I told you Sam Darnold sucked over and over and over again. Now I'm being credited with signing Sam Darnold. Fish and chips. Everybody's obsessed with likes. It's a disease. Gammon Brown. Of course, Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch said nice things about a player they just signed. What are they supposed to say? He's a training camp body? Critical thinking. No. You're not getting
the money they gave him. It's the money.
No, it's not just the money. You don't have it's like me saying, hey, Gammon Brown's a nice guy that's in the chat. That's a nice comment. Here's what they said. Gammon Brown is the greatest person in the history of chat. There's a difference. Kyle Shanahan said that Sam Darnold has got as good a skill set as there is.
I'll say one comment I've never heard him make about Trey Lance that he made about Sam Darnold. He said, I love the way Sam Darnold throws.
Right.
When has he ever said that he likes how Trey Lance throws?
Never heard him say anything good about Trey Lance at all, other than he's a good guy. Gammon Brown. Panthers need a quarterback and didn't even want Sam Darnold as a bridge quarterback, Larry. I'll give you a like if you need clicks. What are we doing here?
He's not only giving you a like, he's giving you $15.
Gammon Brown. I did not sign Sam Darnold. I don't even particularly like Sam Darnold.
I think you need a show with Gaiman. Like, if a lot of people liked argument, I don't even think we were anywhere near as spicy as how you and Gaiman could get.
GPK all day, who's another terrible hater in here. He says, Larry hates Lance when he is hungry. Get that man a cheeseburger. Thank you.
You need a Snickers or a cheeseburger?
Yeah, I need a Snickers.
Satisfies.
All right. Vish, what do you got cooking on the channel the rest of the week? What do you got going on, man?
I'm done for the week, man. I gotta go home now. And I got some family stuff going on this weekend. And then I'll be back next week on Tuesday with you. But I feel like all this spicy content, we've just kind of used it up. We're gonna need a different thing for you and I to argue about on Tuesday.
Rod J, kind of bitter. He's like, Gammon 100. Mad at me. Everybody's mad. Oh my god.
It goes just Krug. Yeah, I don't think we need to revisit.
There's a lot of
I think you and I have done and dusted that debate. I'm just happy that we were able to have the debate. I don't know about you, but just a side note, I hate watching TV or any sort of sports shows where the two guys just, confirmation bias each other the entire time. Like, hey, you're so right. Hey, you're right. Hey, you're right.
Spot
like,
on,
have a real conversation about the sport, man.
You're spot on, Vish.
Thanks, Larry.
Just every time anybody says anything, you know what? Bingo, right back at you. We're in lockstep. And just
Rod is not mad at you though, Krug.
We're simpatico. All these different ways to say that we're in lockstep. What's that, Rod? Who's mad?
I don't think we can be simpatico unless you and I are disagreeing at some point.
Rod J says he's not mad.
Yeah,
I'm not mad at you, Krug. All right, there you go. I misunderstood.
Krug, if you and I were agreeing on everything, it would be the fakest show ever.
Dude, you're the best. 49er Josh, Larry and Vish, a spicy meatball, but you guys are great. Dude, seriously, I have had more fun sitting here rapping back and forth with you on all these topics because, here's the bottom line is we know each other so well at this point that I know I can throw anything at you. And I hope you can throw anything at me
100%.
And that we can just chop it up. And it's all really because it's the off season and there's not a lot going on.
And I actually Love that. I love that I can come on here or I'm on with you and I can disagree with you. Like I love that I feel like I can always just voice whatever is authentic in my head. And I hope you feel the same way anytime you talk with me about this because I feel like that's what adds to, really, really good football conversation.
We got this one who cracks me up. It's the Pig in a Pickle Trey Lance show. Oh, we got this one. GPK all day. It's going to be fun after the draft seeing Larry eat crow.
We got JC Montana in here coming at me. I like it. I need a hater in here too. Gosh. He's very upset. This is my favorite conversation because everybody still is mad at me about doing it, but nobody's upset at Croc. It's interesting how that works. Two people share the same opinion, and some people are very, very upset at one person and don't seem to be so upset at the other person.
TC says at Bomber T, stop it. Hilarious, dude. Larry lost his mind over Brock like this. A lot of this fan base and media, it's totally ass. I'm not really sure. Rod J says, Krug, you're awesome. That's why I watch. It's still Trey area. Dude, I know nobody's gonna. You know what's gonna happen is Trey's gonna do well, and then people are gonna be like, I'm gonna say he's doing well, and then people, you've totally flipped. Now you're a Trey fan. It's like, dude, no, come on, bro. I'm a big Trey fan. I wish I could get him on the show. Be awesome. Look at this one. Brand new. Larry is praying they trade Lance.
Larry, you gotta like somehow preface these things by saying like this isn't my opinion, this isn't what I would do because
I know. See on the bottom of the screen, Vish, it says Krug show hits Scottsdale courtesy of New York style sausage. Here we go. This is what it should say.
Larry Krueger does not want to trade Trey Lance. Larry Krueger thinks the 49ers want to trade Trey Lance. There you go. That's the headline.
What's that? I could just wait. Where's my banner? I need to go banner here. We create a quick banner. Instead I'll replace this. This will be the new bottom of the screen from now on. The entire show. I'll roll this.
You know what's the craziest part in all of this?
Here we go.
You were legitimately a Trey Lance guy before the draft. Like, that's what gets me. I was not a Trey Lance guy before the draft, like, at all. Like, at all. I thought he was the 5th best quarterback in the draft. I had Mac Jones ranked ahead of him.
Who was your Fields?
Who were you? I had Fields of the 3. Now, revisionist history is easy. I think Justin Fields would have been the right pick at 3 even now, 2 years into it. That's who I wanted at the time. But the 49ers never seemed to be into that, like, at all. I thought the pick would be Jones because that's what everyone was reporting until the week before the draft. I was like, I think the pick is going to be Lance because I just, was riding the national train of whatever they were telling us. But, yeah, of the 3, I liked Fields the best of those guys for sure. And it's crazy because, like, here we are in this conversation and, like, you legitimately wanted Trey Lance. That's who you wanted them to draft, and you're like the hater. It's a wild turn of events.
It's a wild turn of events. Smack Jones says, keep the content coming, fellas. Should I just from now on just go with the scroll on the bottom? I love Trey Lance. Me advocating for a Trey Lance trade is simply me reading tea leaves on the 49ers. None of what you see here can be used against us in a court of law. Oh,
yeah,
man.
It's so interesting because it feels like somehow with the 49ers, we're always reverting to the same conversation no matter what. See, GPK all day, he's keeping us accountable. He knows I was a Justin Fields guy. But I like legitimately, Larry, it's funny because like I look at how Fields turned out now, and I know like he's one of the better runners we've ever seen at quarterback in the history of football. But there's way too many things that have scared me in the first 2 years where I don't look back and think like, damn, the 49ers should have taken him. I don't feel that way at all. I think it could have been pretty ugly with Justin Fields and the 49ers too.
We got this one from Miguel. He says, come on, guys. Larry has receipts about him being pro Trey. I can prove it. I can absolutely prove it. No, it makes
you're just a hater of them all, Larry.
Well, you know what I really was on the draft? I wasn't as pro Lance as I was pro Lance, Wilson, or Fields, and I was anti Mac Jones. And I was so frustrated listening to Greg Papa and John Lund because I got the feeling listening to their show that day on draft day that the Niners were going to take Mac Jones because Greg was talking up Mac Jones, and Greg has sources. He's the voice of the team. And I was like,
works for the team. Yeah.
Are they going to go with Mac Jones? Then they went with Lance. I thought it was the right pick. Then Jones has that great first year. And there were an awful lot of people who were like, yeah, Jones is better. Jones is better. Isn't it funny how year one, Jones was better, was like common wisdom. Right now, I would say Fields and Lawrence would be considered the best, right? Common wisdom. Right now, Zach Wilson's considered the worst, right? Would you say?
Yeah.
Yeah. And Trey,
the thing with Fields though, like obviously he's physically the more gifted player than Jones. But if we're talking about skill set wise, what would have fit the 49ers, and I was a Fields guy, it would be Jones over Fields for sure. Fields has problems managing the pocket still. Fields' internal clock is a little questionable. Fields is still a little bit.
You would go Mac Jones over Fields?
If you ask me today, knowing what we know 2 years about the two players who would have been the better pick for the 49ers 2 years ago, it would have been Mac Jones. Now, Fields has way bigger upside.
Yeah.
We've talked about it, right? Win now team. You take Mac Jones' skill set, right? He's got quick feet. He's accurate, short to intermediate. He's a good processor. And he's basically an upgrade from Jimmy kind of across the board, little bit. You put that on this roster with these weapons and this coach and this play caller, he probably has a decent amount of success in his first 2 years. In fact, I would argue they probably go just as far, or in fact, even make the Super Bowl if they had picked him. Now, do they win one? Probably not. There's also a ceiling to the player, and they traded, 2 firsts and then used the extra one to acquire him. So, would you trade all of that for Mac Jones? Nobody would do that today, knowing what we know. And maybe Justin Fields becomes the kind of quarterback you would trade something to that. But just in terms of right now, Larry, if we look, and do the hindsight of 2 years ago and all of that, Jones would have probably been the easiest fit because they would have probably just gotten rid of Garoppolo then and there. And he had a decent level of ability to play quickly, play right away, and play the right way. And with Fields, I love Justin Fields still. I see him in Chicago, every week he's on Fox for me, and I get to watch him. He's a very, very talented player. But in the pass game, Larry, there's a lot of things that I think would scare the 49ers, and I don't think the 49ers maybe would have the patience to allow Justin Fields to play the way he played in Chicago last year. I mean, Chicago kind of reinvented their offense a little bit midway through the season because Justin Fields had issues, throwing the football in quick game, passing up available throws in front of his face, not managing the pocket too well. Very talented players still, though. I agree. If we're talking upside, I think honestly, if we're looking at the class, it's very, very overrated right now. Outside of Trevor Lawrence, all those guys look like they were way overhyped before the draft.
I know. And it's funny, on draft day, I remember saying, you know what? History tells us that probably 3 of these 5 guys are going to be busts. Mm-hmm. Which 3 are they going to be? And nobody knew. Right now, it looks like Zach Wilson.
So I was the opposite. I was thinking 2 would be successful and then 1 would be decent, because I was looking at 2018 as an example where Rosen was a clear bust. Darnold was, when we were at 21, right? Darnold was a bust because he was about to be traded to the Panthers. He was a bust. Baker at the time was actually coming off of a good 2020 COVID season.
Right.
Browns, right? So he was coming off of a good season where we looked at Baker as like a solid starter, and then we looked at the other 2 as stars in Lamar and Josh Allen. So I thought, Trevor was going to be the star. Then 1, I thought, Mac Jones would be the Baker where he's the solid starter. And then 1 of Fields, Wilson, or Lance would be the bus, and 1 of Fields, Wilson, and Lance would be the other guy that would be a star next to Lawrence. Right now, it looks like Fields has the best chance to be that guy. But Lance still also has a chance somewhere in there. And it looks like Wilson is the Josh Rosen of this class. That's how it feels right now. But it's so fluid, right? Everything changes so quickly.
No question. All right, man. I'm going to let you go. Get on with your weekend. Sorry we went so long today.
Dude,
I
owed you
2 hours and 24 minutes.
I owed you this time. You and I go 2 hours every Tuesday, and we come on here and go like an hour, hour 10. So I owed you this time. I'm happy to do it. I'm happy we were able to get a debate that entertained everybody in there. And as always, I appreciate you having me, and I'll see you next Tuesday. Somebody has to be here keeping you accountable, Krug.
Dude, seriously, you're the best, man. Have a great weekend. We'll see you Tuesday on your channel. Tuesday, we like 5:30 Pacific. Is that what it is, or is
more
it
like 6:40, 6:45 Pacific? If that works.
6:45 Pacific, yeah. So a little bit later.
Perfect,
a little bit later.
We'll
see you then.
You know, I'll text you during the week, but yeah, I'll see you. Have a great rest of your weekend.
Peace, brother. We'll
sure
talk.
you keep this. Make sure you're keeping this banner down there every time you're talking. I feel like it's needed.
It's better. It works. It helps the chat.
For sure. Have a great rest of your night. Have a good weekend, and I'll talk to you on Tuesday.
Sounds good. The great Vish Kumaran. Vish is the man. Vish is the man. Quan says Lance will lead the Niners to the Super Bowl. You heard it here first. That's one perspective. We got this one from 49er Josh Faithful. He says, I really like the safety from Florida State, Jamie Robinson. Like him as well. He also says Jalen Duncan can be our next offensive tackle. I like that one. Sean says Niners need to find a replacement for McKivitz. CW wants Cody Malk from North Dakota State. Bruce R says Rajon Wright from Oregon State is from the Bay Area. Krug attended Laney College in Sacramento. Played for Beam, huh? Max says Jacorian Bennett, Mekhi Garner on day 3 would be awesome. Jacorian Bennett is the corner from Maryland. I think that would be a nice one. CW also says draft Jamie Robinson. He F's people up. Seriously. That's what you want from your safety. We got this one from Rockets Nation. Krug, I remember listening to you on my computer back in 2002 in Ohio. Love this show and how times have changed for Niner fans to connect. Vish, you're the man. Had a nice time meeting you in Chicago. Damn, I wanted to get that up with Vish when Vish was in the house. Jan Shozela. Larry hates Sam Darnold. Larry doesn't hate anybody. El Camilo Doralo. Trey has become a distraction to this team. They need to get rid of him. And Michael Ruiz, Larry, I don't care who the quarterback is. I just want the Niners to win. Oh, yeah, we read this one before. If it's Brock, I just want that moron to step up in the pocket so he doesn't get his arm ripped off again. We know. Well, you're not really calling him a moron. You're just frustrated. You're frustrated. Gregus Khan, where's Jalen Duncan going in the draft, Larry? I would say round 3, maybe round 4. Could be as high as the top of round 3, so they may have to trade up. But I think there's let's say 70% chance that he's on the board for them at 99. I like him a lot. Jalen Duncan, University of Maryland, very underrated offensive lineman in my opinion. I like what I've seen from Jalen Duncan. Remix Channel says Shanahan is the reason it's about to rain. Not sure what that means. All right, I think that's going to do it for us. But first, let me mention our title sponsor, Pig in a Pickle, and then I'll come back and finish up the live chats. But Pig in a Pickle, check them out. They're in Marin County and Corte Madera. If you're out here in Northern California, the best barbecue in all of Northern California is Pig in a Pickle. Check them out. They're in Corte Madera, right there in Marin County, open 7 days a week from 11 a.m. to 8 p.m. You can also find them in Emeryville, open Wednesday through Sunday in Emeryville. And if you're walking through Corte Madera, they're in the outside mall. Here's what it looks like.
So New York style sausage was started over 70 years ago. We are the largest producer of fresh Italian sausage on the West Coast.
What makes our sausage in New York style is really the recipe came from back east, from New York, from Connecticut.
If you look at all of our labels, there's maximum 4 or 5 ingredients, which we're really proud of.
There's no preservatives, no MSG, fresh in, fresh out.
The pork comes in fresh, goes out fresh. There's never any freezing throughout the process. We've always used fine quality cuts. We're never gonna deter from that. It's one of the reasons why our sausage is so good. I guarantee you put our sausage up against anybody else's from a flavor standpoint, no one will beat it, hands down.
And do yourself a favor and do me a favor. Go buy a package of the New York style Italian sausage. Guaranteed you will love it, guaranteed.
All right, we're coming down the home stretch on the Krug Show. CW says, Larry, in your opinion, would you consider Talanoa Hufanga a free safety or more of an in-the-box type? Oh, there's no question. He's like a linebacker. If anything, he's a box safety. He's a damn good box safety. I love him in the cover 3, and I think that's why Wilkes is going to be a nice fit here, because you're going to have Gibson playing the deep middle. He's your deep center fielder, ball hawk, and you're going to have Hufanga in the box attacking the mesh point, great against the run. I think it fits. So Hufanga can play the deep middle, but it's not his strength. His strength is closer to the line of scrimmage coming forward. So more cover 3, more lurking up on the line of scrimmage. I think his instincts. If you want to, the one thing about Hufanga that's so awesome is that if you're one of these teams and you just want to line up and run it, and you're going to be like, we're just going to try to run it down their throat, the Niners will creep him up on the line of scrimmage and he will attack that mesh point and he'll just go. When he sees it, he just goes. So that's what I love about Hufanga. I think he does a lot of film study. He knows his ball. And when he sees it, he goes. There's no hesitation, and he'll attack the line of scrimmage with just a lot of physicality. Yeah, I really, really like Hufanga as far as just a player who I think is a special strong safety. I mean, this guy is going to be a good player in the NFL. Now, the key for him is get a little stronger and stop falling off of blitzes and blocks. He's got to. I mean, you want to fall off blocks, but you don't want to fall off tackles, I should say. And he falls off tackles. He'll shoot a gap, he'll hit the quarterback, and he'll fall off, and the quarterback will keep going. So he's got to go stripe on a stripe and bring those guys to the ground and play with a little bit more power. As far as somebody here, what do we, CW, any free safety prospects that you like in the draft? Yeah, there's a few that I really like. The guys that stand out to me, Jair Brown from Penn State, who's just a crazy athlete. He was the MVP of the Rose Bowl against Utah. He's, really good player, really strong, good coverage player. I like Antonio Johnson quite a bit from Texas A&M. J.L. Skinner from Boise State. Jamie Robinson is probably my favorite safety in this draft. I think he can play the deep middle or in the box. I like him a lot. I like Trey Dean from Florida. Great athlete. Jervarius Owens from Houston, really like him quite a bit. Jay Ward from LSU, like him a lot. They list Marte Mapu from Sac State as a linebacker or as a safety, but I think he's more of a linebacker. The guy that I think is my sleeper safety, if you say, give me one safety that you really love, that you think, well, first of all, Christian Young from Arizona, I think would be a great day 3 pick as a conversion. You know, the same way that Demetrius Flanagan-Fowles played safety at Arizona and now plays linebacker with the Niners. Christian Young plays safety for Arizona. I would love to see him playing linebacker for the 49ers. But my favorite guy as far as value in this draft, safety, is Brandon Hill from Pittsburgh. Really good player from Pittsburgh. They're saying he's probably going to go, 220, something like that in the draft. So you're talking about day 3 pick for sure, but he's physical. He's really physical, and he comes downhill in a hurry. And I just really like him. I think he's a good all-around player. All right, that's going to do it for us. Thanks to Fish and Chips, and I've been listening to Larry since dial-up. We have to know him like we never thought we would. He is a 49er fan. All these others are not. We don't know for sure. Larry is 100. There you go. Nick Money Meyer, what's up? What's going on, Larry? How you doing, Nick? Good to see you in here, bro. That does it for us. We're going to go live tonight with Cyrus and Baller after Warriors Spurs. So we got another live stream coming up later tonight after the Warriors game, probably around 9:30. Cyrus will be in the house after Locked On Warriors. Baller's going to be in the house. And Baller said he wants to talk a little draft. Frank Red's not going to be there tonight. Danny's still on vacation. We haven't heard from Ryan in a few weeks. But tonight, after the Warrior game, join me and Baller and Cyrus on the Krueger Show. And thanks to our sponsors. Thanks to all of you. And until then, we're out. Have a great rest of your day.
Yeah, never met a man I've been scared of. Careful, you gon' get exactly what you asked for. Here for whatever you bring me, getting handled. I answer to no one, I don't need to ask.